I'm not Catholic.
In re-examination.
Just so there's no confusion. Not Catholic.
Unbelievable. It is what it is. It is what it is. Well, how are you, sir?
Doing all right. Glad I could make it. I know it's been a while, but I went back to that coffee shop and I was still working. So, I'm a little bit less than capacity, but I could say as far as pacifism, there is no requirement for pacifism. You can participate in war. That's part of the civil government's operation is war. And there is such a thing as just war theory under Christianity as well.
100%. And just real quick as well, shout out to Southern Man over on the Ko-Fi. Let me play you the money clip for that one, sir. So the man with the $5 on the Ko-Fi says, spin that wheel. We still need another $3, sir. We still need another $3. It is what it is. It is what it is. We're only up to 17. I'm pretty sure. One sec. Yeah, because that's 10. And then we had the 7 from the Super Chats as well. So we're at 17 at the moment. I was right. I knew I was right. Well, Rex, what are your thoughts on the general kind of like war thing, or how do you go about the whole war? If you want to bring up like the Iran war, is probably the most recent example we can kind of apply it to.
Well, as far as the Iran war, I mean, it's been a while since I've discussed that, but I remember the foreign minister of Iran admitted on MSNBC Live that they had enough for at least 10 or 11 full nukes, like full-on nukes, enough for refinement. So, I mean, that on its own, and they have the willingness to use it. If they have the motive and they have the means, then I think that's pretty good. A pretty good reason, pretty good rationale.
Oh, shit, boys.
Look at that.
We got, it's raining. It's raining donuts with that, my boys. Let me play the Shrek and kick for that one, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a triple threat, as they say. We got World Radio 232 saying spin it, baby. We got Rex saying over the top. And we got Uriah as well coming in with the $5 says, here's $350 and some change, my man. So we're going to spin that wheel. Move us along. You know what I'm saying? Rex is here to flex his theological muscles. You know? Rex, the next question is, should only believers who can profess faith be baptized, or is infant baptism biblical?
Well, you can rewind to yesterday's episode where we talked about this a little bit before I get kicked off for $100. But anyway, yeah, so I believe only believers should be baptized, because otherwise, for example, there was this thing called the halfway covenant that happened during the formative years of America. And it was the idea that if you can baptize babies, then why can't babies also take communion? Why can't they also have the wine and the bread, the Lord's Supper? Because if they are by virtue in the covenant due to having Christian parents, and that's all it takes is having Christian parents, or at least one Christian parent, therefore why can't they partake in everything that has to do with Christianity? But that's just irrational. You're not going to heaven based on who you are born from. You are going to heaven based on whether or not you've been born again, spiritually speaking. That's what John chapter 3 talks about. He must be born again. If you're not born again, Jesus said to Nicodemus, you cannot see the kingdom of God. You cannot understand it. There's a actual depth to Jesus's healing miracles. Jesus didn't go around healing people just because it was a nice thing to do. He did it for many, many reasons. One of them, of course, is showing his authority over nature, that he was God. Another one is to give spiritual illustrations for what he does in the life of an unbeliever, making them a believer. And part of that is, you are blind. You cannot see things correctly as you ought, because you have to come to God for a new sight. You have to come to God for spiritual understanding and spiritual perception, because you're spiritually dead without faith in Christ. And so when you trust in Christ, he gives you a new heart and a new nature and a new understanding of things. And so he opens your eyes to that which is true, not just opening your eyes, in the sense of like, if you're blind, does he have the power to perform miracles and heal you? But the miracle that is the most important one is what he does in your heart and in your spiritual nature, changing it from one that rebels against God to one that goes towards God and understands God. That's why Christ can say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Truth is a person, that the person, Jesus Christ. And I don't know if Jim Bob gave that to you or not, but I'm giving that to you right now.
Well, like that was kind of one thing that I think came up in the second. Oh, it might have actually been in the first debate where we're kind of going through like that like you kind of establish like the divine mind, how it only makes sense if there's like the fact that the universe is intelligible. You know, like it would have to be designed by a divine mind, and then from that, this whole aspect of like process of elimination, all this kind of thing, and you
Mm-hmm.
go through from that aspect. But the whole kind of like person, why does it have to be a person and not a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Is something that like I still don't fully grasp or comprehend in terms
All
of
right.
like that aspect.
I've
You
been
want to go
working on a
through
new
that?
argument. It's called triage, the truth, rational, imperative argument for God's existence. And what we talk about is if we are entrusted with knowledge, that means there's a moral weight to that knowledge. For example, an atheist might say, well, there's no moral ought to 2 + 2 is 4. Well, in and of itself, in isolation, sure. But if you as an individual say 2 + 2 is 5, or if you adhere to 2 + 2 is 4, you've done the right thing if you adhere to it, and you've done the wrong thing if you don't adhere to it. There's an actual moral failure in terms of honesty. And so if you continue to fight truth, there's a reason that those who fight truth go insane in their head. Those who suppress the truth go insane because of that cognitive dissonance, because you are more and more at odds with what reality is. And that's what the essence of sin is. It's rebellion against God. So even like truth, if truth is just a thing, how can you be disobedient to a thing? If truth is just an unconscious construct around us that is just immaterial, but it's also like corresponding to matter, but it also corresponds to persons, but it itself is not a person, itself is not a personality. How can you be morally responsible to just a thing? You have to be morally responsible to a person. That a concept cannot own you, neither can it keep you accountable, neither can you fail a standard by which it doesn't have a mind which to establish. Does that make sense?
Truth is sorry, a thing is not living,
A thing is not
and
living.
truth is living.
A thing does not give you purpose. But if there is a personal God, he can give you purpose by creating you in his image. Therefore, your very essence as a human being is grounded in the God who made you in his image. Therefore, not only does he own you, but he also established purpose for you. That's why you have worth. That's why you have value as a human being, because over anything else he's created, you have a necessary correspondence to God. And that's why you have a God with whom to deal with. That's why your sins have stacked up against him, because you're made in his image. You're supposed to represent him, exemplify him, worship him, love him. And instead of loving the good God who made you and gave you all the good things you have in your life, all you've done is kept your back towards him and been ungrateful, even though he's been very merciful and kind and patient towards you all this time, even in the face of the gospel, even in the face of sending Christ to die in your place because you deserve to die. But he sent Christ to die so that if you trust in that death, burial, and resurrection, and you turn from your sin, asking God to change your heart, he will change your heart. He will be faithful to his promises to do that. And then you will be saved.
Yeah, but like that aspect of like explaining that like why does like truth have to be a person? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
living. You get what I'm saying?
I've given you reasons why I think it's living, but I don't know what you mean exactly when you say that, because I think you might be coming from a different angle. But my thing is, truth cannot be an impersonal object or some ethereal like substrate that has no necessary relationship with us, because truth itself is prescriptive to our thoughts. You ought to think true things. You ought to obey what is true. You ought to adhere to what is real, and you ought to reject what is false. But in an atheistic or meaningless universe where truth is indifferent and has no mind, has no personality, has no purpose for you, in that world, then there is no ought to your truth. There is no ought not to lies. There's just matter in different shapes floating around, bumping in space. But the reason you have a conscience, the reason you have value, and the reason you recognize the value in others is because God is real, Christ is real, your responsibility is real, your conscience is might not be fully informed or might be misinformed in some ways, but the design of the conscience is given to you by God. The sense of self-preservation, the sense of purpose, the sense of compassion, all these things come from God. Also, our sense of right and wrong come from God, where we can recognize wrong regardless of if somebody's in a different culture or not, and is the reason why we can judge different cultures by an absolute standard in this fallen world.
Yeah, like this whole aspect of like reality, that like reality is constantly in flux, like, and if something is in flux, then it is living. Like that's what I mean by like truth is living. You know what I mean? And in terms of like that aspect of like the what would be the aspect like think of like, let's say like a box or a you know, like this vape, right?
Mhm.
Like this vape itself is not living, it's a thing. Whereas when you look at reality, it is a living, it is living. You know what I mean? As in, um, you know, like we could talk about like how time passes and all this kind of stuff. It's not a static thing, it is in motion. And things that are in motion are living things. You know what I mean? And it's the whole aspect of like being versus becoming and all this kind of aspect. But I think you've given me a lot more insight in terms of like why it's important or why it's necessary for God to be a person and not a thing.
Yeah, I mean, check out. I mean, you probably don't have a whole lot of time, but I'm doing a series called the Moral Argument Marathon where I review my own impromptu, unsuspecting dog piles where atheists are on a panel with me and they're trying to get me. And so instead of using tag, which has to do with epistemology and how do you know this, how do you know that, I go with what I think is inevitable, which is morality. Because if they say demonstrate this, what they're saying is I ought to back up the claims I make. And if I do, then therefore, whatever is true, I will have to. They will have to change their mind based on what's true because they have to. Even though it's possible for them not to change their mind in the face of truth, they can make that choice. It's not like gravity where you can't choose whether or not gravity applies to you. You can choose to rebel against truth and reality and your conscience and nature. You can choose to do that. It's not it like, but you're still accountable for it. So when somebody says, "I," let's wait, and I've made this very clear in one of my shorts, which is if somebody says I'm an atheist and I got deconverted and I had a deconstruction experience because of the evidence, what they're saying is truth is prescriptive to my thoughts and I ought to obey what truth indicates to me. Therefore, everything that's in the way of what is true has to be put away. I have to actively put that away and actively seek what truth is. That can't be real unless it's moral because it's possible to do otherwise. Unlike the laws of physics, it's not possible to break the laws of physics, right? But it is possible to break moral laws because we are moral agents. We have agency over our choices, and we can choose to do the wrong thing. Even if we try and justify ourselves with it, or we try and drink ourselves to oblivion to ignore it, or any of those sorts of methods, it is possible to do that. But the reason they have debate, at all is because they're relying upon those moral norms, those the responsibility that we have as human beings before God, and that's why it's universal.
I love it. It's a beautiful gambit because, like you're saying there, like in even for them to engage in the debate is for them to accept that there is an objective morality, that there is an objective meaning,
They're holding your
and
feet
like
to
to
the
talk
fire.
exactly, and like, it's almost like the Kathy Newman interview where like she thought she had the gotcha on Jordan Pierce, and he flipped the back. It's like, no, you're doing what you should be doing.
So
You
what
know what
you're saying is, yeah,
I
we will always remember that. Oh,
mean?
God, we played more Cindy dolls.
But it's like, again, it's kind of like the nihilism thing. Like, if you're a nihilist, why would you even bother debating whether or not nihilism is true? Self-defeating
Exactly.
position.
Exactly. So I have spent a lot of time, even today, I've been chiseling different subcategories of arguments based on the moral argument. And basically what it comes down to is that what they'll say is, well, moral realities are just a brute fact, meaning there is no explanatory thing, it just is. But let's say you take the biggest megazord ever of all the numerous brute facts that you could put together and then make it arrange it so it's fine tuned to mimic the God of the Bible, but it's not the God of the Bible. It's just brute facts. There's no God. These are just all rules that just are. Okay, let's do it side by side. If we have the God of the Bible versus your Megazord of brute facts, why ought I choose your Megazord of brute facts over the God of the Bible? And because there's no oughts in their world of brute facts, they can't tell you why you ought to choose atheism, even if you grant them all the brute facts they would need to mimic a scarecrow version of the God of the Bible. So it falls apart, even in the most grand cosmic construct they can throw together.
Because like, even from the aspect, the whole brute fact bullshit thing, but like that's why I love hitting them with, like, what's the difference between dogma and axiom?
Mm-hmm.
And they get really upset about this because it's a distinction without a distinction, you know? Because you basically point out,
Because
and
they
like,
value not God more than God. That's what it is. That's all
yeah,
it is.
you know what I mean? Like, that's essentially what, like, brute fact is. It's, so you just accept this as dogma. You're making the claim that it requires no further justification, but you cannot justify that said claim. You're just presenting a dogma of, well, it doesn't need to be justified. You know what I mean? And like, this is the key thing
Right.
of, like, you can make negative claims. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And once you cop that as well, in terms of like debate and all that stuff, then it's like, okay, you're forced to then have to justify that negative claim, and they can't do it. And then basically you show them the fact that it's like, you complain against the Christians because they have their dogma, but like, your scientific axioms are no different. You know what I mean?
Can
You
I
were just accepting this as true. Go
can
ahead.
I
Of
share my screen real quick? I made something in
course.
honor of this. Uh Here we go.
1 second. I think I need to do this and
So check this
this.
out. This is called the Just Is League. So you got this collection of brute facts because everything just is. Don't ask why. Don't question it. Don't put everything together. Don't have a system. Don't have answerability. Don't have a way for forgiveness to be possible or justice to be possible or justice and forgiveness to be possible at the same time in the same universe, by the way, because that would take a free will choice act of a person in order for forgiveness to be real. So if forgiveness actually isn't given by brute facts, because forgiveness would be contingent upon whether or not a brute fact was first offended or not in some way. So forgiveness cannot be foundational because it is reflexive to a counterfactual of whether or not somebody is going to be offended, right? But then you have a problem because if forgiveness isn't real and they want to maintain that we ought not do what's fake, then they ought not forgive. Also, if justice isn't real and they ought to do what is real and not do what is fake or not do what is false, then they ought not pretend that justice is real either.
Mm-hmm. Which is why, like, I was kind of mentioning this earlier on, all this kind of stuff with the whole, like, communism and atheism goes hand in hand, because they don't want a state to actually have justice. They want to do the whole do as thou wilt. Whatever I want to do, I want to do. It's just all my preference and all this kind of stuff. There is no objective standard because, again, they don't want an objective standard to compare to, because they don't want to be wrong. But why do you have that feeling of not being wrong or not even being perceived as wrong? It must be some sort of, like, even like your whole preference thing. It's like, why do you have a preference for the truth? And it goes back to
Right.
your argument there of morality.
Exactly. Because if they say they have a preference of one over the other, you ask them, did you use reasons to reach that preference? If they say yes, then that means there's an objective value map by which they have justified their choices in order to make their worldview. If they say no, there's no reason to adopt their worldview. I don't know what their next step is.
There is no, and like, this is the sad thing as well. Like, a lot of them, this is why I keep tying it back to ego. Like that's the like how I like the only way I'm able to explain it, where it's like they'd rather be right than be true. You know, they rather have sorry, they rather win than be right. You know, I mean, they want that perception of victory and all this kind of stuff, rather than kind of saying, "Listen, I made a mistake. I got bogged down in these falsities, that like these comforting lies, the sugar coated lies." Then actually, like embrace the truth. You know, and it goes back to, like I said, it has to go back to the ego, where it's like they don't want to feel as though they were a fool or they got tricked. Like no one wants to feel as though they got tricked. But like I said, the best thing you can do is to admit when you got tricked, because that's how you're able to then correct the path and go forward. You know what I
Right.
mean?
But you can only correct the
Beautiful
path if there
argument.
is one correct path. And Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And that's why, part of why truth is a person. Because you can, if truth was a thing, you cannot be beholden to a thing. A thing cannot give you purpose. And if it's just, you're not a thing, like a rock or like the laws of physics or open space, that can't give you purpose. That can't give you meaning. But God does give you meaning because you're made in the image of God. And that's why he sent Jesus, truly God and truly man, to die in your place to bridge the infinite gap that your sin has created that separated you from God. And that's why you need Jesus to die in your place and nothing else, not your good works, not your good intentions, not your good feelings, not your prayers, not your actions, not your rituals can bring you and God together. It's only God who can do that. And that's why Jesus had to be man and God in one, because that's the only way to bridge the gap between God and man. He had to be the perfect man, and also he is God himself. And therefore, because he's God, he can satisfy that reconciliation by being infinite and taking all of an infinite punishment on the cross, being the fullness of the Father's wrath in our place, so that we don't have the fullness of the Father's wrath forever and ever in hell. Okay. And then he could be the perfect man, so that his righteousness as the perfect man who lived the perfect life is imputed to our record upon repentance and faith. And our sin, which is all we've ever contributed, because everything we've done is fallen short of the glory of God, our sin is put on the record of Christ on that cross. So that's the double imputation. And that way, God can forgive, be just, and the justifier of the wicked, because sin was punished. And yet, because of that transfer of records, because of that imputation, going both ways, now we can get to heaven. Now we can be reconciled with God. Now, if we trust God, we can be reconciled to Him and Him alone, only through what He's done and not through what we've done. Because faith and repentance is reliance upon Christ's work and His character to save us. And saving includes being saved from our sin. And what that means is not that you don't sin anymore, and not that you don't have moments where you are at a worse spot, right? You'll have sometimes 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, all that sort of thing. But what it does mean is the theme of your life will be godliness and no longer a lifestyle of sin.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing in terms of the way like the atheists will have like an impossible stand for Christianity, and like a complete bastardization or straw man saying you aren't perfect, ergo you shouldn't even call yourself a Christian. And I think they kind of give the game away with what like they're like when they say that, the whole kind of thing of like accuse your opponent that which you're guilty of. Like they have a mentality where it's like, well, like I'd rather just not believe in Christianity because like like I'm not perfect or I've fallen short. And it's like, no, like that's why you need Christianity. It's because you are going to fall short, but you need that aspect of community. You need that like that objective standard to let you know when you've fallen, and to pick yourself back up and get back in the saddle kind of thing. You know what I mean? Um, like I said, a lot of profundity, very profound in terms of the argument that you're building there. And I think the key aspect is that like it's like people are using words and they don't know the actual definition or like the meaning behind them. And one key aspect I've noticed is that like a lot of these atheists or moral relativists or moral subjectivists, like they fundamentally don't even understand what morality is or what morality is pointing to. And that key aspect of like the like meaning, which is why I do the whole like what does word mean? And people are like, what the fuck? And it's a unit of meaning. What does meaning mean? You know what I mean? And it's like it's what gives life value. The reason why you wake up in the morning is because you see meaning there. But how do you explain meaning unless there's a divine mind holding it together? How can you explain gravity unless there's some sort of force that's acting there? You know what I mean? And like I said, you pointed back to like the Renaissance and all this kind of stuff. Like all of this is like Christian. And that like that's why like even like I had to hold myself accountable and say it's like, well, I'm saying that I'm not a Christian, but by the very minimum, like, and this is what like atheists should be saying as well, that like you are culturally Christian. And I think like Dawkins like done his whole thing where it's like he said it and then he kind of like instantly tried to take it back and all this kind of shit. But like from that like core essence in terms of like the culture that you are in, the culture that you live in, is a Christian culture, is the byproduct of Christianity, not atheism. Atheism gives you gulags. Atheism gives you Soviet Union. You know what I mean? And then even in the Soviet Union, like the whole like KGB had to like, you know, try to infiltrate the churches and they still couldn't even do that. They still couldn't get it done. And like you read into their writings and all this kind of stuff, it's like this is where we get to like Gramsci and like the Frankfurter School and this whole like cultural Marxism that we're seeing is that they couldn't do it purely on economics, which again, the mere fact that you have Gramsci saying is like we need to destroy the culture in order to get them to go to communism proves that like what Marx is talking about with like the economic struggle, like the class struggle and all this kind of stuff in the economics, that's completely bullshit because now you just have to, you know, pivot over into culture and try to infiltrate through the culture, which again, this is why I keep saying it's not going to work. Simple as it's not going to work, and like it's kind of like demonstrating itself like in real time, so to speak.
Mm. So Shantae says she's hearing mostly our voices and not a whole lot of the words. I think Tareyak, you and I have probably done a whole lot of like next steps and next steps and next steps and debates and thoughts, and then the chat is like hearing like the afterburn of all of our thoughts that we've kept to ourselves. And so maybe one day I'll do a video if I'm ready for it to detail in full the argument I've got and trying to shore up all the walls on each side that I can think of. It's very hard though. I'm not gonna say it's impossible to make a deductive argument, but I can make a best explanation argument rather than a closed case argument for all of it. So, but yeah,
it's like when I say like I am, therefore there is. A lot of people say that's just words, that's just gobbledygook and all that kind of stuff, and it's like no. In order, like it's kind of like the similar to Descartes when he says I think, therefore I am.
Well, but you know what Bertrand Russell said to dismantle that, right? Because he said that what Descartes missed is that he smuggled in the conclusion of the premise by saying I. He opened with I, which presupposes, which would be viciously circular in that case without God as the basis for that.
Yeah, like even to have the idea of self, there has to be something. You know what I mean? And this is why it's like when atheists say something came from nothing, that literally makes no sense.
Well, they just redefine what the word nothing means. So like, what's his name? Lawrence Krauss would define it as the laws of physics and low energy, not a reference to Jeb Bush, but the laws of physics and low energy, some kind of hum. And it's like, okay, what provided that in the first place? Is it emergent? You know, and that's one of the things that, you know, when it comes to morality too. If morality is just emergent from nature, well, so is immorality. So how could you be the provider of the law and the provider of the offense of said law from the exact same source, the exact same nature? It's incoherent. That has to be like, at least in Christianity, there's primary and secondary causation. Primary being God, who makes decrees about how things are going to happen. Secondary being us as free will agents making choices, manifesting those things that are going to happen as we desire to do so of our free will. So, but they don't have that in atheism. Everything is just nature.
Yeah, because like when I say like I am, therefore there is saying like in order for you to even exist, there has to be some sort of like objectivity. You know what I mean?
But you're a contingency. Like you are not the grounding of truth. So
Yes, of
only
course.
God can say I am, therefore is in any meaningful way. You can only say it reflexively based on the reality you're dependent on to live.
Yeah, but that's why it's such a key line. I am in the Bible. That's where that comes from. You know what I mean? Like when Moses says, I am,
God
like that's
says
who I
that.
was supposed.
Moses doesn't say that.
Yeah, one sec. I need to, like I said, I'm pulling from memory here, but Moses quote
I got a guy in my
around
chat
I
says there
am.
is no good or bad, only preference. The problem with that is if your view is true, then I ought to adopt it because truth is prescriptive. Therefore, it's an internal contradiction because what the commenter guy is saying is I ought to abandon my worldview that there is good and bad, and I ought to adopt his that there is no good and bad, which is an internal performative contradiction.
Yes, it was burning bush when God says to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you're to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Right? And then it's like Abraham. You know what I mean? It's like that whole like when you end what is it? Because it was like Abram and then it was Abraham. You know what I mean? And it's like kind of like a was it like a suffix? Yeah, suffix kind of like a aspect to like to the name, and it's the same thing like with Gabriel, Michael. Like it's like there's meaning behind that that doesn't get explained, but we just kind of take for granted on the face of the surface. Then that's also when Jesus says I am, like that was the him like this is why I always kind of point back to but like with any like these debates that you see against the Muslim where it's like Jesus never says that he's God. Like what do you think I am is?
Right. That's why
You know?
the Pharisees were going to stone him after he said it, and they explicitly said
Hmm.
because he made himself to be equal with God.
You know, and it's like this is the thing as well, man. It's like once you get like into it and like the deepness of it and the profundity of it, you're just kind of going, wow, like I really am a retard. You know what I mean? To even kind of like doubt it. But I think part of the process is having that doubt. So then you can get a solid kind of like grounding of why it is the truth, you know? Man, like I said, mind blown, to say the least, Rex. You know what I'm saying? And also, like I said, I understand you're streaming as well. So if there's any comments you want to kind of shout out at the same time, like you're more than welcome to as well. But we are coming up to the grift break. So if there's any kind of comments you want to give a shout out before we go on the grift break.
Yeah. So I think Google the Chieftain is talking about the ancient Akkadian, saying that there is some Babylonian god that says "I am," and before that, it's like, okay, that's fine, except that that religion is dead, and Christ continues on. And so, if you have a religion that maybe echoes parts of who the real God is as a counterfeit God, then yeah, sure. Like that couldn't be true. I mean, you can also see sacrifices all around the world. What is that a reference to? That's a reference to our conscience knowing that if we're going to have peace with God, there requires a sacrifice. We instinctively know this, just in ourselves. That's why you see Cain and Abel giving sacrifices. That's why you see other civilizations giving sacrifices because they know that they're not right with God and something has to die and they don't want it to be them, but they don't know Christ.
And like this is the whole thing of like the like revelation being a thing where it's like it's being revealed to you, like, and you can piece together through like even like going back to like pagan things, like you'll see the same thing, and this is what atheists would point to was like, oh, they just copied it. It's like no, like that is the objective truth that has manifested through all these and culminated into Christianity. You know, it's because they never give like this is what I'm saying, man. Like they're so bad faith. It's crazy. Well,
In every
it's
sense of
either
the
like
word.
bad faith or it's you know literally. You know what I mean? And again, I'll bring it back into it. But like I said, folks, we're going to go on the grip break. I've reset the timer there as well. Now is the perfect time. If you got any spare change, all this kind of stuff, more than appreciative, never expected kind of thing. If you want to move on from the topic, but it is the religion theme anyway, so there's plenty to get into, a lot of meat in the bone. But now's the perfect time to drain the bladders, fill the drinks, maybe grab some popcorn and stuff. It's going to be a good one, ladies and gentlemen. And if not, I was going to say, yeah, sorry, with the stretch the legs as well, get the circulation going as well. You know what I mean? It's a key thing too. But if not, like I said, sit back, relax, enjoy the music. We shall be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
In the merry month of scams, from a hidden lair I started, left the suckers crying, their wallets nearly parted, saluted me old ma, who popped some Tylenol, made me slow of wit, but a trickster after all. Then off to spin the yarn, leave where I was born, cut a shamrock crook to charm the fools and nobles, a pot of rainbow gold, promising the bold, and swindling all the cold on the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the raw. In Mullingar that night, I rested limbs so weary, started by day next morning bright and early, took a drop of the pure to keep me heart from sinking. That's the Tareyak's cure whenever he's on for drinking. To see the lassies smile, laughing all the while at me curious style, 'twould set your heart a bubbling. They asked me was I hired, the wages I required, till I was almost tired of the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the raw. In Dublin next arrived, I thought it such a pity to be so soon deprived of view of that fine city. Then I took a stroll, all among the quality, me bundle it was stole in a neat locality. Something crossed me mind when I looked behind, no bundle could I find upon me stick a wobbling, and while on for the road, they said me Connacht brogue wasn't much in vogue on the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the raw. From there I got away, me spirits never failing, landed on the quay just as the ship was sailing. Captain at me roared, said that no room had he. When I jumped aboard, a cabin found for Tareyak. Down among the pigs, I played some funny rigs, danced some hearty jigs, the water round me bubbling. When off holy head, I wish myself was dead, or better far instead, on the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the raw. The boys of Liverpool, when we safely landed, called myself a fool. I could no longer stand it, blood began to boil, temper I was losing, poor old Aaron's Isle, they began abusing. Hurrah me soul, says I, me shillelagh I let fly. Galway boys were by, saw I was a hobbling, with the loud hooray, they joined in the affray. We quickly cleared the way for the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the raw. Now with me little leprechauns, we're grifting through the nations. Tareyak leads the band, promising donations. Send your gold our way for a cause so grand and true. We'll charm your coins away and vanish in the blue. Me ma's Tylenol twist gave me wits to trick and tease. Retarded charm they say, but I bring 'em to their knees. Join the merry scam, donate quick and free, for the pot of gold's a sham on the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the
and green. Got a rainbow for a runway and a pop that's looking lean. I've been dancing on TikTok, selling shamrock and FTs. But the goal's running low, darling, won't you send a little to me? I'll jig on your screen, do a reel with me, beer. Drop a super chat, sugar, make a poor Sprite feel cheer. It's a wee bit of grip, but it's honest and true. I just need your dollars to sparkle like dew. Fill me pot of gold, pretty baby, won't you fill me pot of gold, make it overflow. Send a 5, send a 10, send 100 if you please. I'll be dancing all rainbows down my knees. Fill me pot of gold, honey, don't be shy. I'm a grifting little leprechaun with a twinkle in me eye. Come on, y'all, Venmo's happily grift 6 my. I got Lucky Charms courses, just $9.99. Millionaire mindset from a fella who's never seen a dime. I'll bless your PayPal with a 4-leaf emoji spell. If the pot stays empty, I'm heading straight to well. I'll trade you a selfie with me pot for a tip. Add glitter and filters, make your timeline flip. It's a hustle with heart, just a wink and a nod. Help a leprechaun live like a country five god. Fill me pot of gold, pretty baby, won't you fill me pot of gold, make it overflow. Send a 5, send a 10, send 100 if you please. I'll be dancing on rainbows down on my knees. Fill me pot of gold, honey, don't be shy. I'm a grifting little leprechaun with a twinkle in me eye. Cash App, Zelle, crypto, whatever floats your shamrock. And now listen here, sugar, every coin that you send turns a poor little sprite into your rainbow best friend. Ooh, fill it up, right eyes. Fill me pot of gold, pretty baby, won't you fill me pot of gold, make it overflow. Send a 5, send a 10, send 1,000 if you dare. I'll be jigging in diamonds, green glitter in me hair. Fill me pot of gold, honey, don't say no. I'm the griftiest leprechaun you'll ever know. Kinpee, fill me pot.
Yeehaw! As they say down south, baby. We're back in business. Shout out to Southern Man with the $2 says for the grift. My man, appreciate you, kindly, sir. And who was in chat that was mentioning? Is that Shantae that was singing? Pretty sure it is. Yeah, it was Panch. That yeah, we got Shantae on the L vocals. You know what I mean? Why you all do this to me? It is what it is. It is what it is. And again, to shout out Shantae. She tried to make it as a voice actor. I wanna get your feedback, chat, in terms of how do you think Shantae done in her voice audition.
Hi, I'm Felicity. I'm 22 years old, and I'm reading for the role of narrator in Princess Party. Just let me know when I can start. Okay.
Petunia Tabernacle emerged from the castle with a young frog. She took the frog and kissed him squarely on the lips. When she kissed the frog, he turned into a prince.
Felicity, could you do it a little bit more feminine, a little softer? I'm so sorry, just the note said that the narrator was wise beyond her years.
Try again.
Okay, no problem, I hear you.
So many people think so many random things about me. It's either this or you get called a lesbian, Shantae. You know? Like, think about it in my position. I get called a lesbian all the time, which I can't even really hate on it because it's like a double insult. You know what I mean? Because they're calling me gay and a woman. You know? So that's
Oh
why
my
I can't
gosh.
get mad at my chat. You know?
Yeah.
It is what it is. It is what it is. But where, like, getting back to the prompt, Rex, like, where does like baptism like happen, or like, sorry, when does like baptism happen, like for like the Protestants?
Baptism happens when you are volunteering yourself to be baptized because it's been confirmed that you actually have saving faith. Obviously, you shouldn't baptize people who aren't sincere. So, for example, like in Acts chapter 8, there was Simon the sorcerer. He supposedly turned to Christ, but what happened was he actually was still a sorcerer at heart. He didn't really turn to Christ, even though Philip did baptize him, because it came up later and it's shown by the fruit of his life that when he saw the miracles that the apostles were doing and healing and all those sorts of things, he came with money to them and wanted to buy the power of the Holy Spirit from them. And then St. Peter says, may your silver perish with you. For, in fact, I'm going to pull up the Acts chapter 8 just to make sure I get it right. And I say St. Peter,
100%.
I don't believe in like a distinct sainthood. I believe that all believers are saints. There's no like gradation there. But I should say the Apostle Peter. But yeah, so baptism begins in reality when a truly repentant, faithful person comes to Christ and makes the public profession by being immersed in water. They make an actual choice. They're not a baby who has no idea what's going on and gets a few dots of sprinkles on top of their head. That's not a baptism, and you won't find that in Scripture anywhere. Here we go. Acts 8, verse 19. We'll start with 18, actually. Now, when Simon saw the Spirit was given through the laying on of the apostles' hands, he offered them money, saying, give me this power also, so that anyone whom I lay my hands on may receive the Holy Spirit. But Peter said to him, may your silver perish with you, because you thought you could obtain the gift of God with money. You have neither part nor lot in this matter, for your heart is not right before God. Repent, therefore, of this wickedness of yours, and pray to the Lord that, if possible, the intent of your heart may be forgiven you. For I see that you are in the gall of bitterness and the bond of iniquity. And Simon answered, pray for me to the Lord, that nothing of what you have said may come upon me. And that's the last we've heard of Simon the sorcerer, so we have no indication that he ever really repented or believed. But he was baptized at one point. By not an actual baptism in the sense that it was from a sincere belief, but he was immersed in water.
It's like I said, like each morning you get up, you put water on your head, but it's about the actual commitment, and it's about like the, I don't know if I'm using the right word, like the actual like sacrament, or like the meaning behind the ritual, so to speak, in terms of like the intention, all this kind of stuff. Shout out to Dart as well for the gifted membership. But again, YouTube is not doing it's not displaying the members. So I do apologize in terms of not being able to congratulate, but whoever got the membership, congratulations. You have Dart to thank for that one. And then also we have Southern over on the Ko-Fi as well. Real quick, let me hit you with he says with the $2. So I got to do a bit of quick maths before, because we got Uno Momento. So we had Darth coming in with the gifted, that's 20, and then we're up to 4, I think, in terms of the wheel bank now, and we're going to spin the wheel. Appreciate you kindly, Southern Man. So actually, without further ado, let me get the wheel spinning before we get into it. So it gives me time actually to change the background as well, or the banner. Rex, will there be a pre-tribulation rapture of the church before a literal 7-year tribulation?
There will be no rapture. That is made up. It was made up by John Nelson Darby and was popularized by C.I. Scofield 200 years ago. It's a very new belief. It has no historical background in Protestantism, Orthodoxy, or Catholicism. So, very quick answer. So if we ever meander into other topics, that's why. It's kind of an open and shut case.
Yeah, but like the whole idea in like Revelation, or do you not prescribe to Revelation?
Well, the rapture that is often talked about is this idea that suddenly Christians are going to be sucked up like a vacuum into the sky, and all their belongings are going to be left behind, and all the people who aren't saved are walking around, and they get to pick up believers' houses and bank accounts and stuff like that, and just like, hey, it's it's like a pinata. That's never been the teaching. The teaching about being caught up in the air is like the very end, but there's no kind of end and then the actual end. And also, I'm an amillennial, which means that I don't believe in a literal 1,000-year reign. I believe that the church on earth is the reign of Christ, and that I think is also the understanding. I don't know if that's of the Orthodox or the Catholic per se, but it definitely has more history than dispensational pre-trib eschatology, meaning the teachings about how the world is going to end. So I don't believe that it is like a literal inhabiting of Christ on the world for a 1,000 year to the dot kind of thing. It's more of a description of an age of the church.
Okay. Because like that's something that always kind of like confused me in terms of the aspect. But you're giving me a lot of food for thought here, a lot of food for thought. Real quick as well, shout out to Prince of Dogs. Again, YouTube's not displaying it, man. Like YouTube is driving me crazy with the amount of change that they're making and all this kind of stuff. But shout out to Prince of Dogs for the 5 gifted memberships, and then I don't want to read the name, but the person that just donated on the I think it was directly on the PayPal. Like, let me double check that to be sure. Yeah, directly on the PayPal. Whoever done, if you want to let yourself known in chat, with the $5 as well, they said, sorry I got busy was the message on the PayPal. Appreciate you kindly, which means we have to add 25 in terms of the thing. So I think we've enough for another spin as well. But if you want to kind of get more in terms of like the revelation and the rapture and all this kind of stuff, because like I said, there's a lot of meat there too. There's a lot of meat to a lot of the prompts that are about to come up as well. But let me give you the Shrek clip for that one, folks. Appreciate you, Connor. We're up to $29 in the wheel bank, so let me know when you want to spin. But like, I guess this kind of like leads into like this whole thing. So I thought I knew Christianity because like I grew up Roman Catholic and all this kind of stuff, and then like there's kind of like very different kind of like aspects and interpretations in terms of like what's actually being talked about. Like the more and more I kind of like listened about the Orthodox and the Protestants, I'm like, well, one thing that I can be certain, I think at this stage, is that like the Catholicism is clearly wrong, or has things wrong.
Yeah, Catholicism and I would argue Orthodoxy both have things wrong. One of the easy things with Catholicism is in Catholicism, you cannot know if you're actually married or not. It is literally impossible to know if you're married to your spouse because in the teaching of annulment, they pretend that the marriage just never happened. If you married under like some circumstances where you didn't know some sufficient information about the person you were marrying. And so what they say is, well, you weren't fully informed, and therefore that is somewhere along the lines of either manipulation or coercion or something, deceptive. And so therefore, because it was done that way, you were never married in the first place. We're just gonna like dab that, get out of here, right? Yeet. And it's like, wait, hold on a second. Then the entire time it was just fornication? Oh yeah, it was just fornication the entire time. Well, hold on. I got a Catholic marriage. You guys did all the things. Hold up, right? So because that's always possibly under scrutiny, that a marriage was never a marriage to begin with, if annulment is true, that you can just use lack of information, then you can't really establish who's married and who's not. So here's the easy part. If you're married, if you've gone through the ceremony, you're not blood related, they're not married to somebody else, and you weren't done under coercion like the barrel of a gun or something like that, where it's not true consent, then you're actually married. And that's why part of the marriage vow is for better or for worse, for richer or for poor. That's one of the things I go to for Catholicism. Also, there is no pope in the Bible. They say there is, based on a loose interpretation of like, upon this rock I will build my church. But the rock that Jesus is talking about is a statement that Peter made, that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Because Jesus asked him, "Who do you say that I am?" And that was Peter's answer. And I no longer call you, Simon, but Cephas, meaning rock. Peter, rock. So, but that's not a statement of Peter himself being the basis of the church, or some office that Jesus created being the basis of the church, because we understand what the Bible says based on what it says in of itself. That's why Jesus, when he talks to the Pharisees, he often says, "Have you not read?" But hold up, the Pharisees are the normative authority. We know that based on Matthew 23, when he says that they sit in Moses' seat. And so that is a place of authority, right? How come the Pharisees were wrong about so many things and misleading so many people, even though they had a church office? It's because they weren't submitted to the scriptures, which is why Jesus says, "Ye know neither the scriptures nor the power of God," which is an interesting pairing of phrase. The scriptures are the evidence of the power of God. The scriptures are our ultimate authority. And so people like to say, well, you can't know what the scriptures say unless you have our institution. And like, that's not true, because if the normative authority during the time of Jesus didn't know the scriptures and they were faulted for it, then that means that they should have read. Like Jesus says, "Have you not read?" The operation required to obtaining the information from scriptures is just reading. It's not decoding. It's not moving your hand over the text like a wizard so that you get what it's really saying, even though, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, I can give you multiple quotes from this, but we can do that over Discord if you like. I think chat is got to have their own thing, but I can give you plenty of references like Acts 17:11, where it talks about the Bereans who were Jews in Berea, Greece, more noble, because when the Apostle Paul himself came, they checked his teachings by Scripture, and Scripture calls it more noble than the ones in Thessalonica, because they checked daily the Scriptures to see if these things were true. And same thing with Paul in same chapter, Acts 17:2 and 3, where he reasoned, Paul that is, reasoned from the Scriptures to the Jews in the synagogue. How can you reason from the Scriptures when they're not the normative authority, and they have this epistemic wall that they can't get past? They need some other authority to teach them that's a man, when they can just read for themselves. How can you reason from something that they can't read? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like the key aspect of like reason is that kind of knocks on from the interpretation aspect, where it's like, well, how do you know you have the correct interpretation? Well, you'd use reasoning.
I think it's a smokescreen.
You know what I mean?
You can note. Okay, so for example, even in like, I think it was First Timothy, maybe even chapter 1, where Paul talks about how Timothy knew the scriptures from a youth. How is that possible? Did they, as a young child, was he like clergy? Not likely.
Yeah. Because like by pointing to because I was doing this yesterday in terms of like God is reason, or like that'd be something I'd point to in terms of to prove like objectivity, or the objectivity of God. And like having, because like I was reading in terms of the aspect where you guys like sola scriptura is not just do whatever the Bible says. It's like this whole aspect of like there's the Bible is like the source, but then you're using reasoning as like the tool.
Here's how this works. It's Bible first, which produces our theology. Theology second. Theology keeps your car on the road, but theology has to align with what the Bible says in total, not just in part. You have to know the Bible altogether itself to put everything in its right place and keep on studying. And then after that, philosophy gets the scraps, because the Bible is the one that determines what we know of who God is as a person, tripersonal. And then the theology makes sure that when we look at the scriptures, we compare topically like with like to understand what the full teaching of different parts of life that the Bible shows altogether. What is wisdom? What is foolishness? What is good? What is bad? All those things. And then the philosophy is more or less what we have left over when the theology, it doesn't speak to anything that the Bible would have otherwise spoken to. For example, the Bible doesn't like directly call upon the laws of logic. or things like that. But first we go to the Bible, then we cite our theology, then after that, philosophy.
Like, are you classifying like reasoning as philosophy?
Yes, because reasoning has to have a grounding. Because let's say you're an atheist, your reasoning mechanics are going to look way different after the fact. You will use the laws of logic, but a priori, before the laws of logic, you prioritize your atheism. If you're a Hindu, you might have laws of logic. Actually, probably you wouldn't. But let's say you're a Muslim then, and you would have the laws of logic, but those laws will be arranged in such a way that would complement your priors, which would be Allah in that case. But if you're a Christian, your laws of logic, for example, the law of identity, right? My identity idea of what a human is characterized by what God says about us. So if our ontology as a human is that which is both physical body and spiritual person, one being made in the image of God, therefore responsible to God and responsive towards God in our conscience, then that is a human ontology. But if you're an atheist, the human ontology is you share a common ancestor that was a single-celled organism on a rock somewhere, and you just have a different shape based on genetic drift, random mutation, speciation, adaptation, all those sorts of things, but you're no fundamentally different than a rabbit or a sea sponge or anything like that. You're just another shaped living creature, and you have feelings and programs, then that's it. So your beliefs characterize your logic. It's not the logic. If you think that the laws of logic are running the show, you've fooled yourself. It is your priors that are running the show for how you apply the laws of logic.
Because I would argue that theology and philosophy are intertwined, that they're linked. And what I mean by that is that what's often portrayed as Plato being like the grandfather of philosophy. Like you look at his teacher, especially like Heraclitus, which was like a major influence on Plato. Like you look at Heraclitus, like he basically says that it's like fundamentally that there needs to be like this aspect of like supreme being. Like there needs to be something that's like governing this change, some unchanging principle or unchanging reason or unchanging count of what is explaining all the motion in the universe. You know what I mean? Because when we make that observation, it's that like everything is in flux, everything is in flow, but it's not complete random disorder. It is ordered. You know what I mean? So what is that order? You know what I mean? So that's where I'd kind of say, like, I'd put like philosophy and theology kind of like intertwined. And in terms of like, especially kind of like with modern day philosophy, like the what's it one like basically just like if you're doing kind of like philosophy in college, like the mainstream kind of thing, they just kind of push like that aspect of things like modular logic and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not actually getting the like what like Plato would talk about. You're not getting the like Aristotle and all this kind of stuff. It's like a formalized, like sterile kind of like philosophy. And that's what I think like when I talk about philosophy, or when like an academic would talk about philosophy, we're not talking about the same thing in terms of that aspect. But I would say that like religion is that kind of aspect of it's like the same thing that it's teaching you, but it's teaching you through the lens of a story or like poetry, or like it's like an artistic form to express the same thing that philosophy. Again, like I said, when I say philosophy, I'm not talking about like that academic kind of like sterile thing. It's basically like teaching you the aspect of like logical, like, you know what I mean? Because when you're talking about like morality is going to be both logical and practical. You know what I mean? You're not going to ever say that something is impractical or illogical, but it would be moral. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or
but our theology is going to teach us how to order those things and how to stratify those things. The logic itself is dependent upon value claims in order to make order first from those things. So even though theology and philosophy, if you want to say they're related, I'm not going to argue with that because obviously there's going to be a logic with it. But I think philosophy, it just kind of begins where the theology might not necessarily would kind of end in some way. I think there's an intertwining, the same thing where there's an intertwining with the Bible and your theology. But the Bible was not meant to be an instruction book on everything in the world. You know, the Bible is not an instruction book on debate, for example, but the Bible doesn't prohibit debate. The Bible is not an instruction book on science, but the Bible doesn't prohibit the study of science, nor does it give you the scientific method in and of itself in an explicit term. But we still use it, and we can still use it. And there are implications that you can draw from the Bible to get there, but it's not nearly as clear. So I think it's kind of hard to say where the line is drawn between those three, but I still maintain that that's the order that it should be done with because you can't just use like the laws of logic to tell you, for example, like a trolley problem in of itself. You have to make value claims before you can even tangle with the trolley problem.
I would say, yeah, I suppose like the starting point, like that the Bible has to be the starting point, which is why it'd be number one.
Because it's the only infallible, inspired word given by God.
Because in terms of the example you gave, in terms of like the trolley problem, there'll be people that would say, to give like the leftist argument, if there's, five people, like the typical kind of like base case is like five people versus one person, do you press the button or not? You know what I mean? And most people would say, yeah, like you press the button so you only kill one person rather than killing five people, right? But you then throw into the mix, like let's say it's a lefty that's answering the question. You say to him, okay, like it's five, MAGA versus one socialist, and then all of a sudden they got a different answer. Now comparing those two, you'd be able to define like why is there like a contradiction or why is there a change in the answer, which would then be like the whole like which would reveal like the preferential treatment they would have for like one of their allies and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So like pointing back to like if there's contradictions, you know what I mean? Like if the general rule of thumb is five versus one, that you should always pick the one that dies versus the five that dies. Like any time where you find the contradiction should inspire more deeper thought of it. Whereas let's say it's five mass murderers or serial killers versus like one innocent like pregnant woman or something like that. Like
I'm not even telling you how to
clearly-
answer. I'm just saying, in order to even have a struggle with it, you would have to make a value claim. Because if there is no such thing as value, 5 and 1 are equivalent. You don't even have to do anything, or you don't have to. You can do something or not do something, but it's of equal value if no value exists. And there's absolutely no struggle because there's absolutely no question of what there is no problem because unless there's value to human life. And I would say I would define value as any trait or attribute that is prescriptive to our actions as moral, rational agents.
Well, does that not get us back down to like how ludicrous the nihilism is? Because like what you're saying there, where it's like there would be no difference between killing five people to one person to the nihilist, and how like this moral relativism, like this whole thing, like once you collapse meaning to zero, like it's literally just like it's just complete nothingness, and that's where it goes back to like the. Have you seen my video on proving God mathematically?
No. You want to link that to me on Discord?
We'll play it. We'll play it for the audience and all that kind of stuff as well. This is one sec. This is what's been my main video displayed on my channel. Oh shit! One sec. It's showing the live thing. There we go. Tareyak math. Mathematically proving God. It's actually with Shiva was the counter position, I believe.
Ooh.
There we go.
You know, Shiva and I have had a few back and forths. You've been there for a couple of them, I think.
Yep. It's been quite impressive. I'm not gonna lie. Especially I think one of the last ones that he's had back and forth. It was just you were just constantly like you had every single answer to his question. I was like, this is bellissimo. You know what I mean? But
Well, thank you.
we also have our boy Bricky guest appearing. He's the one that provokes the conversation.
I do not know that God exists.
God must exist. God must exist, and I can prove it mathematically, sir.
God.
Oh
Mathematically.
yeah, go on then. Let's see.
Do it,
Let's
do it,
see.
do it.
Let's see the equation.
Not to mention, you
If-
just contradict
if-
yourself. You were-
Yeah.
If it were to
Ignore that,
be
Gareth.
0, if it were to be 0 and not the 1,
Right. If what were to be
the zero would be constant.
If
would be
what
nothing.
were to be the 0.
That'll be infinity. That'll
What
be
is the word "it" referring
That'll
to?
be
Being.
infinity.
Being the supreme being, God, supreme being, right? To prove that you
If-
need supreme being. Yeah.
So if
No matter
God
what,
was
'cause
0
even-
rather than 1,
Yes, if God was a nothingness, if all this was nothingness, this was all just an illusion, right?
well, hang on, wait.
You would
Sorry.
still need the supreme being. Because for-
in terms,
For there to be
are we
change,
discussing God? or
0
the-
would have to change. And because numbers exist and they make sense, there is meaning independent of language,
Where do
which gets
numbers-
around your language games, Shiva.
Where do numbers?
Because there is one and the many,
Where do
there must
numbers
be
fit?
supreme being.
This is why I love this country. This is exactly
Wait,
why
wait, wait,
I
wait,
love
numbers exist.
this little Irish bastard. Thank you. Tareyak,
Where do-
you
where
are
do
my
numbers
fifth
exist?
son. Thank you.
I am, therefore there is.
So you said you were going to give like proving.
Mhm.
William, how you doing,
Which is
son? I see
For
you
to
in the
deny being would be to deny the very statement of you denying being.
Right,
It is a
but
contradictory position, sir.
In your view,
That's how you get it done, boys. That's how you get it done. The reason why it was such a key thing, because like anybody that knows Shiva, like he says, oh, like language, it's all just a game. You know what I mean? That like these words, like we can basically shift them around and all this kind of stuff. Real quick as well, shout out to Plastic African for the £10. That's the King Shun right there, boys. Let me give you a little bit of Pepe for that one. Appreciate you kindly, sir. Thank you very kindly for the support. We're up to 39 in the wheel bank, so let me know when you want to spin. But this whole aspect of like the one and the many, Pythagoras was the, like, if you go back to Pythagoras, like he's the one that kind of like represents this. And when you're talking about like supreme being, like numerically, how would you represent that? And if you do it numerically, it transcends language. Then all this whole thing of like this theory of like language games, all this kind of shit, it falls flat in its pieces. And one is the perfect number to represent unchanging. Because you have 1 multiplied by 1 gets you 1. You know what I'm saying? That's unchanging. And you get the same thing with 0. 0 multiplied by 0, you get 0. Right? Now here's the difference though. 1 divided by 1 still gets you 1. But what's 0 divided by 0? And you even heard Bricky there saying, like, if it was 0, it'd just be nothing. And like that's me saying like one of the 3 options, 0 divided by 0, would be 0. Apparently, right? But then Brick says no, it'd be infinity because you can have an infinite number of zeros. You know what I mean? Because it would still get you back to 0. Or is it 1? Because any number divided by itself always gets you back to 1. Then you have the many aspect, which is all the change that we see and all this kind of stuff. 2 multiplied by 2, or 3 multiplied by 3, or 4, like all the way from like 2 all the way up to infinity. Any number multiplied by itself, except for 1, will generate a new number. It will change. You know what I mean? But then any number divided by itself gets you back to the 1, which is why God must equal 1, being unchanging. You know what I mean? So, like I said, it's one of those things that like you read the like deep enough into it, all of a sudden shit just starts making sense, and you're just like, wow, You know what I mean? You literally just get awestruck, you know? Also, shout out to Plastic African for the £20 as well. Let me give you the guitar solo for that one, sir. Appreciate you very kindly, Plastic African. Thank you very kindly for the support. And folks, the panel link is pinned. If you want, you can post in your chat as well, Rex. If anyone wants to join in the conversation, get a bit theological, so to speak, you know what I'm saying? But we are up to, one sec, the banner's up to 59 as well. So we've got a couple of spins in the bank. Just want to move on to, but bringing it back to the prompt.
Yes, sir.
Like the whole aspect of like, I guess this kind of like goes in terms of the tribulation or rapture and all this kind of stuff. Like as a Protestant, like what's the view in like hell?
So historically, I'm not a like Rev Russ, the unapologetic preacher, is more of a church historian guy, so he can tell you probably more about the historical views of hell. But I think, and I even had a discussion today on the channel Certainty Exists 888. We talked about eternal conscious torment, and Revelation 14:11 I often go to because I think that's one of the most explicit verses ever on the topic. Revelation 14:11 says, "And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, these worshippers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name." So I think that's pretty clear. If you want another one from the Old Testament, you can go to the very last verse of the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, and then verse 24. But I'll start with verse 22. "For as the new heavens and the new earth that I make shall remain before me, says the Lord, for so shall your offspring and your name remain from new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath. All flesh shall come to worship me, declares the Lord, and they shall go out and look at the dead bodies of the men who have rebelled against me. For their worms shall not die, their fire shall not be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrence to all flesh." So it is that a due punishment and the judgment for offending all of an infinite God, all of a holy God, all of a good God who never did anything wrong by anybody and never gave them, anything that they didn't, like we don't deserve anything, to be honest. God can do whatever he wants with us. You could even, like, if you want to deposit this for sake of an argument, you could imagine a God who, some preacher said, every time we open our eyes, there's this claw that comes from behind our head, stabs us in the back of the eyes. Well, God didn't make us that way, right? He made us. The Bible says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. There is a beauty to humanity, and even though I think, like you brought up the Renaissance, you can take that too far and make a statue of David, and then like it's like, can you put some clothes on? But there is something about humanity that is genuinely distinct and beautiful because God has made it that way.
Yeah. One second, let me just catch up with chat real quick. We got Blue saying, "Have a good day, night of for real this time. We'll be dreaming of Shamrocks." I appreciate you very kindly, Blue. You're my boy, Blue. Also, make sure you subscribe to Rex. Like I said, absolute dropping dimes this episode. You know what I'm saying? Also, Buff, I seen you backstage. If you want to hop back up, I don't know if you're having connection issues. No worries. If not, all this kind of stuff. Buff also said if I can play as good as that dude in terms of the guitar, what can I say, man? There's hope for all of us. But like this key thing in terms of like the way I view hell, like if someone was to say like, well, what do you think hell is? I'd come at it from the perspective of like, when you look at like these serial killers, when you look at like these like people that like worship at the altar of lies, like was it pathological liars and all this kind of stuff, like they are miserable, I think of like even like the OnlyFans chicks or the prostitutes, all this kind of shit, having to surround themselves with luxury because like internally they are in hell. Like they are literally miserable and they are suffering so much so that they cannot even exist in reality without these luxuries, without these drugs, without this like artificial aspect to keep them going. And like that's kind of like and again, I'm not 100% in terms of like what the Roman Catholic view is, but when I was growing up, it was always like this is a place where it's like, there's pitchforks and there's fire and all this kind of stuff, like this image that's painted and all this kind of stuff, where it's like a physical place that you go. Like Hades would be like the Greek example and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the more and more I talk to Christians, the less and less that's actually a thing. It's more so like a mental state that you're in because you've turned away from truth. Essentially, you're no longer even living in reality. Which again, like to say like in terms of poetry or like it's just a beautiful way to put it. But we also have a special guest backstage. Let me introduce him.
We bring in the studio this morning one of the gay rights activists, Mr. Should I call you Mr.?
Mr. Buff, welcome to the show.
Hello there. I am not gay.
Who says I'm gay?
They are liars. I saw you, Will, and Matt, and it seemed I was here earlier, and just I've been bouncing around doing stuff, taking care of my truck and everything, but I got nothing to do right now on this lovely hellhole of Nebraska.
So, what are your thoughts on the whole religion thing? Because you were saying that you were looking forward to this, and I think 2 days ago.
Oh, that I am. Well, it's weird with me in religion because I'm not religious anymore. This question, I saw that one. I was just like, you know what, I ought to join them because I don't fully understand it. They part of pre-tribulation. What does that mean?
Like this whole aspect, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rex, but this whole aspect of, like you're going to be like tried. You know what I mean? And then if you're a good soul, you'll go to heaven, and if not, then you're going down to the pits of the fiery hell and all this kind of stuff. Real quick as well, I want to share.
Well, hold on. There's no such thing as a good person. We are all bad people. That's why Jesus had to die. Your goodness doesn't do anything. Isaiah 64:6 says our righteousness are as filthy rags. Or as I said last time, the translation of that is used menstrual rags. So we deserve hell for the best thing we've ever done.
Oh, that's a pretty bold statement. What dictates good and bad?
God's character, which we have fallen short of.
Before we get into that as well, I do need to shout out, and I forgot to play the premium meme as well. So because we're on the religion wheel, we might as well play this premium meme.
You know, there's a Bible verse I think about sometimes, many times. It goes, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I. Send me."
Poetry. But also got Mad Cow on the Ko-Fi says spin that wheel as well on the Ko-Fi. So I've added that in and I've done the thing as well. I need to get better in terms of like, waiting a bit before interrupting because it's such good conversation, such good dialogue. But we are moving on to the next one, gentlemen. Unfortunately, like I said, it's a lot of meat to so many of these topics. You know what I mean? But it goes to show the wheel is working, as they say. But does God still heal the sick miraculously today in direct answer to prayer and faith?
No.
If he does, it's very, very rarely. I am always skeptical of such claims, and faith healers are one of the reasons that I am, because
right there.
Yeah, faith healers are more often frauds than not. They're usually in it for money. They usually have some almost quasi Jim Jonesy sort of thing where there's always some kind of sexual scandal waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
By default, I'm going to be skeptical of miraculous claims. Not because I don't believe miracles can happen or that there isn't the supernatural, but because there's just too many fakes and charlatans. And even in the Bible itself, Deuteronomy 18 says, if even in the Old Testament, when there were prophets that, that didn't come every day, but Deuteronomy 18 last few verses says, Deuteronomy 18:20, but the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name that I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, how may we know the word of the Lord that has not spoken? It says, when the prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You need not be afraid of him. So you have an actual evidentiary evaluating criteria of a true and false prophet within the Bible. So you can't say, I'm a true prophet, but I get it wrong sometimes. No, if you get it wrong at all, you're a false prophet. And in the Old Testament, that would be your life. You'd be stoned. That's it.
So, like, the key aspect that I find is that it's like, do you think that there could be something to this where it's like this whole kind of like faith healing thing? And like, do you think that those are like the like individual things? Because when you read these stories of like these atheists and all this stuff, like they always have like one of these stories where it's like, oh, like they were doing crazy stuff and all this kind of stuff, and essentially like the likes of faith healing would be an example of this, where it throws like this false image of what Christianity actually is. Like you're a Protestant, you're a Christian, and you're kind of coming from the aspect of like that's not like true. You've no issue calling out like these, like you would call them like false prophets, essentially, like these people that claim to be faith healers, but they're not actually faith healers.
What's that guy's name?
Well, there's Kenneth Copeland. There's Bill Johnson. There's Lou Engle.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Lou Engle?
No, Keith Copeland. That's the one I'm thinking about. Yeah. That piece of crap. I need the G6 jet. You know, I can't fly with the sick and the whatever. He just insulted people. It's just like, really, guy. And I hope that guy fails even more than he has before. There's people like that, you know, Jesus, I left the church, but I respect people having their beliefs. That's fine. I don't care. I'm never going to tell them that they're wrong. Never. But slime balls like that really can detour people that really want to have something to believe in, especially when they say something like that so publicly.
Yeah, well, that's why we're told that many false teachers will come and you'll know them by their fruit. You can't be a true teacher of God and have a lifestyle of sin and lies and debauchery going on. But also at the same time, you can't use other people's sins, if they're hypocrites, as a basis for leaving either, because I mean, the book of Romans says, you know, let God be true and every man a liar. I think it's Romans 3:4 here. By no means let God be true and every man a liar, as it is written, that you may be justified in your words and prevail when you are judged. So what, it says in this previous verse, what if some are unfaithful? Does their faithlessness nullify the faithfulness of God? So even if everybody in the world who said they're a Christian is fake, we still owe our allegiance to God. We still owe our love to God, because God freely offers us his love. And if we reject righteousness and love, what's going to be left for us?
It's a fair point, you know, but I'm kind of looking at it in terms of like this whole aspect of, what's the best way to describe this? It's like they're like plants, you know. And I don't mean like the stuff that grows, like this whole thing of like they're trying to, like, they're doing a disservice to Christianity, but they're acting as though they represent Christianity. You get what I'm saying? And like when you see the likes of like Nala Ray would be another kind of classical example of like this whole thing where it's like clearly like that there hasn't been like a proper change in place. It's just the same gambit, but it's just like, okay, instead of monetizing, you know, like her body, she's just monetizing Bible. You know what I mean? And in terms of like, do you think, oh, like probably the best way to ask.
So I don't follow her, so I don't know whether or not she is just grifting or not. So you'll have to tell me the facts that for the evidence that she's grifting. So I don't know one way or the other. I don't have a dog in that fight.
Like I'd have to kind of get into like the subtleties of like the way content gets sexualized and like how women do certain things in videos where it's like the unspoken kind of thing that they're doing. But there was basically like she put out a video where she was like baking cookies, but it was like heavily kind of like sexualized, even though there was no like nudity showing and all this kind of shit. You get what I'm saying?
Okay.
Oh no! I got
So she's presenting. So she's presenting herself still as sexual, even in the context of Christian conversations.
In that video, and then, for example, there was another clip I saw where on her podcast she had on some guests, and they were talking about how they can divine with the spirits, and like
Sounds witchy.
them for
That sounds
yeah,
like a con.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not Christian spirituality. The only spirit that Christians are supposed to be communing with is God, and by God, it'd be on God's terms. It wouldn't be going to the Wicca store and then lighting some incense and then putting down your Ouija board and then doing it in the name of Christ. So I'm not saying she's doing any of that. I'm going based on your report of what's going on. So, yeah. I'm not going to say that God doesn't do it. I'm just going to say I'm skeptical every time I hear about it.
Like the I'll try find the video as or if I can find a clip. Where is it? Try X as well. Shout out, sorry, to Bon Voyaro with the $5 says it is a contentious issue when natural truth and data is being eviscerated via hook and crook by the nefarious subhumanoid technopaths. Ooh, appreciate you kind of for the $5. I'm gonna give you the money clip for that one, sir. Appreciate you, Con. I'll try dig up this clip. But like what are this kind of goes a bit of a segue, but like trust me, I will bring it back into the prompt itself. But like in terms of kind of like you're like you were saying that you were raised Christian, but then you kind of like left the church. Again, if you don't want to go personal with it, I understand. But like what kind of led you to the whole aspect of like the break from the church?
Oh, no problem talking about it. Southern Baptists, for the most part, southern, southeast United States, that Bible Belt area. Grew up, the black church. Just think of a movie version of a black church, and yeah, that's it right there. And no, yeah, everything was fine. This is what I'm raised to believe. We go through all that. In '96. No, it wasn't 96. It was 94. My mom died. Now, that hit me hard. I questioned this God I was supposed to believe in. And, like, I didn't hold a grudge. I mean, I stayed in the church. I even got heavier in the church. In 2000, I got rebaptized. I was under the custody of my aunt. She took custody of me. And we switched from going to Southern Baptist black churches to like a multi-racial congregational Christian churches, as they call it. And I had no problem there. I was a big part of the church. It was in the church orchestra band. We had an orchestra. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And had your guitars, drum, bass, and we also had horns. I played saxophone. I did drums for the youth church. I was heavy in the church. It wasn't until I got to college and I met this guy Dave, and he was a Darwinist. Now, I didn't become a Darwinist, but just like talking to him, he had me thinking about things I'd never really heard of or really explored. And it was just like, huh. And it just got me thinking about different things, questioning things. And it kind of opened a door to looking at religion that I never really bothered to look at. And at the same time, I got a lot of Asian friends. I was on an Asian racing team, and they were mostly Buddhist. So I'm just like weighing a lot of things. And then we had a Jewish guy join the team, so I learned about the Muslim faith. I'm just like, there's a lot of things going on here that are conflicting with each other. It's like, what is this one true God? And it just led down a rabbit hole to where I was just like, you know what? All of this is bullshit. And it was, I guess you would say, agnostic for a while. It's like, I don't believe in this one creator, but something happened. I don't know whether to lean towards the evolution aspect or the creationist aspect. And through the 2000s, it's just topsy-turvy. And I just ended up at a point that was just like, none of this makes sense. I can't be bothered with this crap anymore to chase down one source. So technically, I believe in nothing.
Yeah, I mean, death is an ugly thing. Tareyak, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. This is the clip off Nala Ray when we're talking about this kind of stuff.
Too. That's it ties directly into what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
I let him explain mine because I don't like talking about myself. It's weird.
So I have the ability to see in the spirit realm. Just like a lot of people could in the Bible. They are in the Bible. They are called seers, and so that's.
So right off the bat, he has the ability to see into the spirit realm.
Yeah, that's a grift.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Yeah, you're not. I mean, in the Old Testament, it literally says, "You shall not suffer a witch to live, or one who seeks signs, or one who reads the stars, or a diviner, or with a familiar, or anything like that."
Did she even ask him about that, or he just presented that out of nowhere?
He's just presenting that straight off the bat. You know what I mean?
The title a lot of people call me and stuff. Just like Samuel in the Bible, he was able to see things all the time and stuff. Amos is another one. Amos, I always say that name wrong.
Amos. I was like, who's that?
Amos, whatever. Ezekiel could also see in the spirit realm. Elijah, Daniel, Peter, John.
But they weren't using witchcraft. That was given to them by God. They weren't like trying to crack the code of the universe.
Right. If you're going to refer to this person, Amos, however, if you're going to refer to this person, at least know how to pronounce their name, right?
Mm-hmm.
We used to same people having encounters with angels and stuff because they could see it, and so it's something I just have always been able to do since I was little. Like, I don't even know what it's like to not.
Which that is something that we overlook in the Bible. We think that like it's different than it is today, where God, he spoke audibly, but a lot of it was here just the same way we have today. Right. A lot of these angels, there's a reason why like certain people could see them in a group and others couldn't. It's because they could actually perceive that. They had that ability. But we think a lot of times that it's just everyone can see it and they just appear in human form, which they can do. There is instances of that as well. But a lot of those characters overlooked and they just had that ability.
Well, and they're in a different realm.
Yes.
That's specifically why we can't see them. Most people cannot see them. They're in a completely different realm.
Just like colors or like sounds, where they're there all the time. You just can't perceive it. A way that we like to say it is it's more like a radio, where the frequencies are happening. You just can't hear it until you turn into it in your car.
Oh, okay.
101.1, now you hear that. But that means it doesn't mean that it didn't exist. You just couldn't perceive it. Same thing with light and the different colors and with this as well.
And that's why like I was raised in a super Christian amazing household and they had a lot of encounters with demons and stuff in their life, my parents. So like they were very open to it and like taught us like, oh no, that you just have to rebuke them in the name of Jesus and all this stuff. But so then I also, with my gifting, I also have the spiritual gift that's talked about in 1 Corinthians 12 about like being able to distinguish between spirits. And for me, the way that gifting works, since I can see the spirits, it's like as soon as I see a spirit, I used to have to ask and be like, God, what is this that you're showing me? And because I can only see the stuff through him in me, and he would like tell me, he's like, oh, and he would give me the name of it. Sometimes they have crazy names.
Going through deliverance, I was like, what?
It's crazy.
But
then at the same time, then he would also just kind of give me this knowing of like what it was a spirit of. Because that's why like angels and demons, they're just like these embodiments of a specific emotions, virtues, sins, behaviors, ways of thinking. You know, like a spirit of lust is lust embodied, right? That, you know, like a spirit of joy. An angel of joy is like joy personified, you know? And so like when I see these things, but now I've just developed it so much, and with my relationship with God, where now instantly, as soon as I look at things, the Holy Spirit in me, I just instantly know the name of it, as well as like what it's.
He just knows everything. He's got gifts. Boy's got gifts, so to speak. So it's like when I'm talking about like these ops and shit like that, like the fact that Nala was like previously OnlyFans chick, and now all of a sudden she's, you know what I mean, pushing like this whole Christianity thing, and that's what she's pushing. Those are the guests that she's having on her show. Like, that's what I'm trying to point out in terms of like, I don't know if this is intentional or she's just literally that fucking retarded.
I don't know. There are a ton of Christian shows that are crap, and that's again why. No, I'm not saying I'm like the greatest Christian in the world, but I know enough to know what's crap, and there's a lot of crap. And so I'm hoping to have some alternative to that for somebody. That's why, you know, I still, as people might say, shoot within the tent. I still, you know, take issue with people when they're wrong and they're pushing false teaching. They're pushing absolutely bizarre teachings like she is about, and then like they are like, there's like a spirit of joy. That's like the joy fairy. The joy fairy comes and gives you a feeling. No, you have feelings internal to yourself. You have emotions internal to yourself. It's not because you got some involuntary visitation of a spirit.
Yeah, and like, because a lot of people say, "Oh, that's Protestant," and then, you know what I mean, like try to paint it all with one brush and all that stuff. Where I wouldn't even call that Christianity.
No,
like,
it's not
like
Christianity.
Kind of said, like that's Wicca, kind of like witchcraft, all that kind of shit. We also have Tavo San Abri, this dude in the back chat.
Yes.
Does anybody know him?
Yes, he is a scholar, very smart guy. I mean, yeah, I've had great conversations with him. In fact, I gave him the formal notation of my argument, which is very long. So, I mean, he's reviewing it right now. I look forward to it. And I've also been continuing to add supplementary arguments to the overall argument. So hopefully he's down for additions later on, but I'll just let him finish what he's got. But yeah, extremely informative channel. He has a argument called CTF, which I think is something like I forgot what it's called, but it shows that in the research, it's not just that Christianity has more evidence than any other religion in terms of historical documented evidence, but way more, far and away, more than an atheistic world could have projected for people that have beliefs that are different but equally false across the board. So check out his CTF argument of comparative, I think it's comparative theological framework is what the CTF stands for.
But he's backstage. Let me introduce him.
Machiwa, Reggie. Machiwa.
Machiwa, Tavo. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for that introduction. Reacts, that was a super kind introduction. That's a really flattering description of it.
Well, thank you.
Nice to be here with all of you. I was kind of listening to the atheist dude saying, like, you know, all the religions are the same.
I never declared myself an atheist.
He just says he doesn't believe in anything, which I don't know what that is, and he probably doesn't.
Dude
know
that
what
left
that is
the
either.
church.
Yeah, the dude that left the church. That's fair.
And I admittedly only heard part of what you said, but I'm sort of on the opposite side of that coin, where I spent most of my adult life as an atheist, including most of my adolescence, and then I became a believer about 2 years ago.
What got you there?
Well, you know, the first thing was this paper that came out by Leonard Susskind and Gerard de Tooft, who were two of the greatest physicists of our time. And Leonard Susskind is the guy who invented a lot of string theory, probably knows more about black holes than anyone alive. And what his theory was, it was a reconciliation of this thing called the black hole information paradox. And it's super esoteric. And I'm just telling you the first step on my journey, but it was super esoteric. But the whole idea is that the universe records the narratives of our lives, our information for all time. So the information that we are, the information that we carry through our actions and through who we are, our very matter, is written into the actual event horizon of the universe in a matrix that's much like binary information. Now, we know this because we can look at black holes and they exhibit the same properties as the event horizon of the universe. So when we look at event horizons as a theoretical construct, we can see that they have certain properties. And one of those properties is preservation of information. So that was the first step for me, because as an atheist, I kind of felt like we out of existence so quickly that you can hardly even say that we exist. Our existence can't matter, especially in a cosmos that's so vast. So what changed my mind for me was the first step, anyways, in my journey was learning that the universe does literally write the narratives of our existence into the event horizon of its very, of the very cosmos that we live in. So that was the first thing that started my shift towards theism. But like React said, I've since I went, basically what I did is I'm a university professor. So what I did is I used academic historiographical techniques, right? So those are the techniques that academic historians use to determine if an event from the past actually happened or if it didn't happen. So I developed about 13 different evaluative criteria. And then I weighed about 17 different religions on those evaluative criteria. And Christianity kept showing up in the top tier. And in fact, across all 13 criteria, it shows up in the top tier. And that's the only religion that does that. Every other religion has strengths and weaknesses on evaluative criteria. And so that was probably the culmination of my journey. And I came to realize there's a real asymmetry in the evidence.
Shantae says, ask Tao if he's got a channel. He does indeed have a channel, and he accepts all challengers.
Yeah, it's just my name, Tavo Sanabri. The CTF argument is the most popular video on my channel, and it's probably my most important contribution to this space. So if you check out the most popular video on my channel, it's the CTF argument, and it goes into some of the stuff that I just said.
Well, I mean, congratulations to you, man. To having, something to believe in. I don't meet many people that go from atheism back. Well, were you ever of the church, or were you just originally like kind of atheist and then found the belief of the church?
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. I was never raised in the church. I was raised in a very austere.
Oh, you did say that. Okay.
Yeah. I was raised in a very austere Middle Eastern religion. And I think when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I said, this is bunk. This is not for me. And, and I still think many fundamentalist or doctrinal views around Christianity are probably also really not for me. But if you kind of strip away some of the doctrine and some of the dogma, and you go back to the actual teachings of Jesus, they're really quite beautiful. And I mean, Gandhi, who was certainly very, had a lot of antipathy towards any European influence, said that the Sermon on the Mount is on par with the Bhagavad Gita and the most salient moral teaching that he had ever encountered. So, I mean, it was stuff like that sort of drew me towards Jesus as a teacher. And then as part of CTF, what I did is I sort of tried to quantify how relevant the teachings are from any religious figure to our current modern intellectual landscape. So I quantified that essentially by looking at how many people in current modern day discourse are without a faith-based or apologetical citation. How many of those scholars are citing Jesus directly and constructively? And I found a huge body of atheists who, even though they're atheistic, even though they have no positive feelings whatsoever about Christianity, do cite Jesus in a way that's constructive and direct. And that became sort of a meaningful data point to me that at least made me more interested in looking at the teachings of Jesus. But yeah, I walked away from religion when I was 9 or 10 years old. Oh, thank you, Shantae. It's very kind of you to say.
Shout out to Shantae. Appreciate you, Shantae. Does that change your opinion in terms of like where you're at, Buff?
Oh, not at all.
Yeah, it comes down to the heart, like the heart of the individual, because if his heart is set against the conclusion, I mean, we can say that about ourselves in anything, is like ultimately it's what the heart is persuaded by. You can throw as many things at the head as you want, but it's God that changes hearts. And if God's not going to change the heart, then and the person's not interested, then there's nothing you can do. We're not, Christianity is not a religion of force, because even when Jesus, he said, you must eat my body and drink my blood. And many disciples left him that day, like a crowd of people left him. And he says to the disciples, will you also leave too? And basically the idea is like, You know, you can turn whenever you want. There's the door. It's up to you, right? It's not because that God doesn't own you or you're not responsible towards God, but God is not a God of grape, right? God is a God that presents his love, and you are free to refuse it if you so choose to. But he also does save, and he does give grace through that to change people's hearts. So if he changes your nature, it's not against your will, because then your will is subject to your nature. But if your nature is hostile to God, then you're going to do what your nature is fundamentally. So that's why you need to have faith in God. And that's why faith is a gift, ultimately coming from God in the first place. It's a mysterious thing. It really is. But I didn't expect reasons to necessarily reach those who have different reasons. So for example, Buff, is that your name?
One of the many.
One of many aliases.
Yeah, we can go Buff. You just go Buff, yeah.
Yeah. So Buff, would you say that there was and I feel bad for bringing this up just because, you know, it is what it is, but somebody very close to you
you're good.
Somebody very close to you sadly died. I think you said it was your mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it. That's fine.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, that is a tragedy. I mean, the Bible says to weep with those who weep, and even Jesus wept when Lazarus died.
I understand that's not the event that changed my thinking.
Mhm.
That's not what did it. It's just going on further in life and just looking at stuff, just analyzing stuff, just running stuff through my head, questioning this, questioning that. It was not her death. Hell, if anything, I got more. Like I said earlier, if anything, I got more involved with the church after her death.
Mm.
Well, then what would be
what were the things that brought you out of that, the faith that you had?
There's one true God, right?
Yep.
Why are there so many religions?
Yeah, because we live in a fallen world of many kinds of deceptions.
That's an easy cop-out answer.
Well, that's not just saying it is an easy cop-out answer. I mean, I didn't say that you had an easy cop-out excuse to not believe in God. I just engaged it with what we have. I mean, if you look at the God of the Bible.
Let me explain why I said that. Let me explain why I said that. If there's one true almighty creator God. Now, this may sound like one of those dickhead questions. Don't take it that way. But it's kind of logical. And I know you have if anybody does, you have an answer for it. If there's this one true almighty God, why hasn't he presented himself to the almighty authority that it is, that everyone knows that he is the one true? There's always going to be the non-believers, but to present such a mighty presence, shouldn't that be believed by all once he presents himself?
Well, he has presented himself, and that's exactly what Romans 1 teaches, that he has revealed himself so we're without excuse. We have a conscience. We know that there more realities exist. We recognize earlier, I brought up forgiveness. Forgiveness can't exist with any other God without sacrificing justice, because there would be no sacrifice provided by God outside of the God of the Bible. Allah doesn't do it, you know. Buddha doesn't do it. Confucius doesn't do it. But we know that we need forgiveness in order to be reconciled with God. We cannot pay God back with stuff he already owns. If we've offended him, we reserve that punishment. And therefore, if we're going to have peace with God, it has to be peace on God's terms. And God himself has to be the one to foot the bill in order to forgive us.
But Buff, I'd be happy to take a crack at answering your question. Why are there so many religions? And that's a question that I got very involved in. Why do religions form? And I came up with essentially 3 different reasons. Okay. One is expropriation of power. Okay. Like if you look at the rise of Islam, it really was a religion of conquest, right? And you know, if you look at the rules of Muhammad in the Quran, they're very persuasive, right? If I was gonna raise an army, I'd be like, you know, if you conquer villages in my name, you get all the spoils for yourselves, like that. And there are many other religions that have a similar sort of dynamic where, you know, they're based on the expropriation of power. And then another reason why religions form is for lack of and pardon me for my indelicacy, but it's to facilitate individuals who want to have a lot of sexual indiscretions. Okay, there are many religions that we can look to. LDS was, if you look at the founding documents of LDS, they're largely cloistered now. But I just had a meeting with a really brilliant individual who read a lot of the initial founding documents of LDS, and they're very, very based on sexually very illicit, very charged teachings. So that's sort of another category of why religions form. But there is a third category.
So, hold on. So all of these have, all of these, how do you say, the people have been presented with the evidence of the one true God, but they still say, no, kind of like flat earthers.
Oh, no. I'm just saying this is strictly an answer to your question about why religions form. And the third category is, I think, the most important one. Okay. And the third category is that religions form, and we know this when something genuinely extraordinary happens. And I'll just give you, and I'm not being metaphysical or anything, I'll give you an example that's very concrete. The cargo cults that formed in the Polynesian Islands, right? When those religions formed, okay, and we could anthropologically watch them form. And there's other examples like Kaudai, but to me, the cargo cults are the best example. They formed because that culture encountered something that was to them fantastical, right? It was technology that was from 1,500 years in the future relative to where they were, right? The indigenous populations of the if you don't know about the cargo cults, basically, it was this clash between the U.S. military establishing bases in the Polynesian Islands, contacting indigenous cultures, and those indigenous cultures were, encountering technology that was like 1,500 years in the future relative to their own level of technological advancement. Right. You see, so they were like, so when somebody gets on a radio and says, I need some support over here, and they send like an aircraft carrier to help them, and they, put up a bunch of like missile things within, like, that's like, wow, these people like have control of magic. They can like get on their little radios and call in a flying machine, and it lands with a bunch of stuff for them. Like, that to them was the power of magic. So they formed a religion. So when I looked at Christianity, I basically tried to answer that question. Why did the Christian religion start? Was it the expropriation of power? Almost everyone says that, there was essentially no power dynamic for at least conservatively the first 100 years of the first 300 years of Christianity. Did Christianity start because of any individuals with like bizarre sexual fetishes and I apologize for being indelicate, but again, probably not. There's really no documentation of that. So are they in the third category where something happened that was to them, the equivalent of encountering technology 1,500 years in the future? And I think so far, that's my best explanation for what happened.
After one true God has presented himself to the populace.
Well, I mean, if you're asking why doesn't God make God's self more apparent, maybe that's a better way of phrasing the
Not
question.
about more apparent, but present himself to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, why are you saying that God is not presenting God's self?
Why is there a white and black Jesus? It seems like such a almighty powerful figure. It's people that he created would know what he looks like.
There's no
some semantics in that. There is.
No, there.
You've never been.
Okay, those are paintings. That okay? If you made a painting where I'm black, that doesn't mean there's a black version of me walking around. That's not how that works.
What I'm talking about.
We actually
have you have a sect group of people that do not want the pale-skinned Jesus.
But that's not relevant to the reality of who Jesus is.
What is the reality?
Jesus was a Jew. Is a Jew.
Okay, so why am I being told by this group of people that no, he was black?
Because they haven't read the Bible.
People don't know what. People don't know what your God and Savior. Go back to the
entire the entire genealogy is given for Jesus in Matthew chapter 1, and then there are different genealogies even before that.
Cool. The Bible. You have a book. They have a book too. Everybody has a book. Which book is right?
they use the Bible, but they'd like to forget the Jewish part, and they say black in place of it, just despite their nose to cut their face. It's just so just because we have people who have a quirky belief that to shoehorn into a text that doesn't support it doesn't prove anything about the text.
Yeah, see, I always figured the phrase, "King of the Jews" would have been, hey, there you go.
Right, or salvation is of the Jews.
Sub-Saharan. It was like, wait a minute. You use the same book, but it says "King of the Jews," but you alter it, and it's just like, I don't know which one of you two to listen to. Not you two, but them two.
What's
it's
the
just like I turn around and walk away, and it's just like,
what's the alteration that you're referring to?
It's like Jesus.
He's referring to like black Hebrew Israelites.
Oh, I mean, is that really?
Oh, there's a set.
I mean, is it really important to ask how much? I mean, we do actually have genetic trees that go back thousands of years, so we can tell something about first century Judeans.
But just even in terms of, like, your main premise, Buff, like you use the example of like this flat earthers, like this whole thing of like, well, like God has presented himself to, but to use that example, like we've presented the evidence that the world is not flat, but there are still people who choose not to believe in a round Earth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it'd be the same principle being applied to this, whereas like God has revealed himself, but it's just simply people who choose not to believe.
I'm not seeing this evidence. There's no physical evidence of the existence of one true mighty God. Everybody puts in there.
But that's like saying,
they'll use this, they'll use that, use this, use that, and none of it checks. It can all be.
Well, here's the thing: if you presuppose if something is made of matter, God didn't do it, and then you ask for physical evidence, then the house always wins because you've already set your presuppositions to that. If it's made of matter, I can attest that it necessarily doesn't have anything to do with God or God didn't do it. You have to, but in order to do so, you have to use a framework by which you prioritize what evidence means, or even the fact that, for example, the whole discussion I had with Tareyak beginning here was that you have to have the evidence lead you to a conclusion, which means that you ought to do what truth tells you, per se. You ought to reject what is false, and you ought to accept what is true. But in an atheistic world where there is no God, that doesn't make any sense. Where does the ought to think or do anything come from if we're just matter with no significance, and that nothing around us has any prescriptive significance? But if we have a conscience, if we have purpose, if truth is something that has to do with God himself, because God is personal, and like a truth so-called in an atheist universe is not personal, then we don't owe any allegiance to something that had no purpose for us and didn't create us for anything. But we would owe allegiance to a person who had intent from a mind, who would have made us with a design in mind and a purpose to our end. That would make more sense as to why truth would be prescriptive to our thoughts and tell us how we ought to think.
What is the purpose?
To glorify God and enjoy him forever.
Oh, to just blindly believe.
That's not at all. See, here's the thing. When I hear I want evidence and I want a thing, and then I tell you what my belief is, and then you say like the opposite of my belief, it just sounds like you're not engaging with what I'm saying.
I have no problem with your belief. Believe. I will never tell anybody they're wrong. I'm looking for answers.
Okay. So
why should I believe?
Well, you already believe in absolute morality, right? You believe in right and wrong. You believe that lies exist and theft exists as moral categories.
I'm not sure about that anymore. Like, what is right now? I think it's just actually that. No, actually about what is good. Like, what is right and wrong? Who determines that?
Okay, so if you take like the furthest example, you take like child trafficking, you're not sure if that's wrong or not.
Extreme example, but yeah, that's wrong.
Okay, so we do have a basis.
Me working on the Sabbath, that's supposed to be considered wrong too. I got to make money to feed my family. So what, I'm a sinner because I need to feed my family?
Well, I think Jesus addresses that, right? his what he says is that there's two commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love each other as you love yourselves. And all the rest of God's laws hang off of those two commandments.
Yeah, on top of that, you're supposed to take care.
Anything.
On top of that, you're supposed. Well, it does, because you're supposed to take care of your family. He who does not provide for his family has rejected the faith and is worse than an unbeliever, says the Bible. And on top of that, if you want to talk about the Sabbath, as far as like the New Testament, I know that Paul says that some consider some days special, holy, and then some people consider all days the same. Let him have his own conviction about that. I'm gonna have to find that exact passage. So I can.
No, I know what you're talking. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that's already baked into the Bible. So I don't see that objection as something that sticks.
Here's what sort of moved the needle for me, at least, Buff. Within a generation, within 40 or 50 years, there were 7 people who wrote books under their own names that said that Jesus is resurrected. There were 14 people who wrote books under their name, again, books or letters or some large work within 100. So 7 within about a generation, about 14 people within 100 years. Okay. Now, if you talk about the healing miracles of Jesus, there was about 6 people who wrote, who within a generation, again, wrote physical works that contend that Jesus was a healer. And then if you go to around to 100 years, about 18 people. Okay. Now, if you look at everyone who is writing antagonistically about Jesus, the Jews, I'm talking about the Toledo Yeshu, I'm talking about the Talmud, I'm talking about Tacitus, I'm talking about the governor of Galilee, right, who was within about 14 or 15 years of the death of Jesus, the governor of Galilee. That individual was Josephus, and he wrote that Jesus was a doer of paradoxical deeds, essentially saying that Jesus had some sort of supernatural powers. Every figure who wrote about Jesus for the first 100 years was writing about Jesus as a healer or as at least a doer of magical deeds or sorcery. There's nobody else from the ancient world that has that record left behind. Now, I know that's probably not enough, evidence to move the needle for you, and that's not even what moved the needle for me. Again, what moved the needle for me was reading about the teachings of Jesus from the standpoint of, Hannah Arendt, who was a very inspirational political scientist and an atheist, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Jürgen Habermas, Max Weber, Carl Jung, Gandhi, Tolstoy, Martin Luther King. All these individuals believed that Jesus had really important lessons to impart. So that's why I started reading the New Testament. I was like, there's actually lessons here that are important to me. And empirically, quantitatively, there is no other theological canon that has that record. So to me, at the very least, Jesus has a record of being a doer of, wondrous deeds, and a lot of people believe in the resurrection. And in addition to that, Jesus is at least a foundational intellectual part of our current intellectual history. And in addition to that, there's no one else from the ancient world that can make either of those claims. Okay. No one else in the ancient world had multiple people writing about them healing. The closest example is Vespasian. He was the emperor of Rome, right? So if he was a real healer, then there'd be a lot of people writing about it. And instead, there was one person who wrote about it as saying that it was essentially natural, the things he did. And the next person who wrote about it was Suetonius, who was writing about it satirically, right? And that is the highest record of anyone anywhere in the ancient world, with people writing that they did some sort of miracle work. Okay. So there's just nobody else in the ancient world that has more than 2 attestations for something that they did. If you even argue that Vespasian had 2, I would argue he had 1, and the one person who wrote about Vespasian was saying he did it through some sort of natural means. So my point is that Jesus is in a very unique category. And in addition to that, there's no one else from the entire ancient world who can say that their ideas, that their philosophies are being cited to this day constructively and directly in multiple different disciplines. I mean, to me, that was sort of a body of evidence that, if I look at the ancient world and I see a bunch of people with, a bunch of people writing books saying that they healed people, then I'd say, Jesus is in an ontological category that is no longer unique or important to me. And I'll tell you one more thing that did it for me. If you look at the claims around Jesus, okay, and you compare those claims around about 60 other events that happened between 10 CE and 60 CE throughout the ancient world, okay, the claims about Jesus are made in roughly the same time frame as many other events that we think actually did happen, that historians agree that they happened. So I don't know. I mean, some of that, and that may not move the needle for you. I suspect it won't. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. You may think, well, I'm being reasonable here, but you should just at least consider the fact that on all sides of the theological spectrum, we make our decisions first. We commit ourselves to certain beliefs first. That goes for atheists and people who have religious beliefs. And always the reasons that we try to come up with afterwards are essentially a post hoc construction.
And just real quick, as well, shout out to the bomb for the $5. Says couple of ruples to hit goals and appreciation. Nothing better than an honest and caring Christian. Thought of the world, the hope and light you are. Appreciate you, Connie. And we got another guest backstage. Let me introduce
Machiwa, Reggie. Machiwa.
Machiwa Batman, Mr. I Am Batman. Welcome to the show.
Hello, gentlemen. How's
What's
everyone
up,
doing?
man? Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you all. I've been kind of listening in the in the outside chat for a little bit, and it's funny enough because one of the papers I'm going to share with you guys is an argument against one of the most recent arguments that I've seen that come from like non-theist communities, where they say they cite doxastic involuntarism. Basically, you can't choose your own beliefs, and so therefore, because they can't pick their own beliefs, they are incapable of essentially becoming a Christian, because the idea is that or requirement is that one has to hold a belief in the gospel message in order for them to become a Christian. And so I constructed an argument through basically analyzing what the actual gospel message is. And when you look closely, you'll see that it's actually a proposition. Now, the interesting thing about propositions is that you do not need to believe necessarily what the proposition is offering to you. You don't need to have knowledge of what it's offering you, right? And when I say knowledge, I mean like you have guarantees, right? In order for you to accept or reject it. And so the rejection of the gospel message.
Hey, Batman.
Did you just go mute?
Oh no, what happened? Oh, I thought it was my connection.
Nope, that's everybody. I looked at Tareyak's facial expression. I knew something went wrong.
Yeah.
He was on a roll.
Odin, you there, Batman? Odin?
Hello?
Say I am.
Now you're back.
Yeah, my headphones just died. My bad. So the idea is that is to nullify that particular type of argumentation as a reason or justification as to why they quote unquote cannot accept the gospel message, and that they aren't liable, morally speaking, to the consequences of rejecting that particular message. That's just kind of a brief explanation of the paper. It goes into more details, and I also break down systematically what the actual gospel message looks like in a actual syntax version. I implemented basically two syllogisms. One is more short and sweet. Another one goes into more details. So that's essentially, what I wanted to share with you guys. So I'm going to basically share this document with you. That's okay, and I'll post it in the inside chat, and you guys can comment on it or whatever.
I guess I'll just add in that I've looked at some of Odine's arguments. They're novel. They're quite insightful. They're a little bit esoteric, so that makes them a little bit more difficult to access. But I think they're quite good. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the triage argument too. By the way.
Yeah, well, I gave you the modal breakdown, at least that modal breakdown. I've added a number of supporting premises with that as well, or at least supporting arguments within the framework. And I actually talked about a few of them today. There's one I called the Megazord, which is if you took a finely tuned tapestry of all of the what would you call it, brute facts, and you just arrange them so as to be formed in the shape or a sufficient function, shall we say, of the God of the Bible, and then you put that side by side with the God of the Bible, where is the ought to choose one over the other? And with the brute facts, the ought can't exist from those brute facts because they don't have any drawing power or authority or correspondence necessarily to you as a person. And the only one that can actually self-attest and be a self-referential metacognitive affirmation of its self would be himself, God, the God of the Bible. And because brute facts cannot make statements or self-attest for themselves.
If you guys want, what I can do, I can read out the syllogism that I kind of wrote out for this particular argument, if that's okay.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe it'll pique your guys' interest a little bit.
I mean,
So,
I kind of like I just wanted to hear if Buff wanted to respond to any of this stuff yet as well, though. Can we bounce it back to Buff for 1 second, see what Buff says?
yeah. My
please.
bad. Sorry for hijacking.
Oh no, you're fine. I'm still not convinced. Carry on.
Any other reflections on all that long speech that I gave?
No. It's just
okay. Well, that's fair. I mean, we can move on, I guess. Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not here to tell anybody they were wrong. I just really am intrigued by what your reasonings are, why you are where you are with this belief. And I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I just have questions.
Yeah, well, like the one thing we have in common would be like moral absolutes, which would point to purpose and value and how we ought to treat each other. Well, you and I already agree that child trafficking is wrong. So that's already a basis that is understood. But if we live in a world where there's just matter in motion, then there's no value associated with that. And so it would be an irrational belief to be against anything, let alone child trafficking, if there's no such thing as moral law.
I mean, Rex, you seem to have the Bible memorized. But
I wish.
Of course I don't. Damn near. But of course I don't believe in that book. But I like to hear. I like how you can jump to certain scriptures. So you definitely have reference points. That's cool. Guy number 2 that joined in, not Batman, the other guy.
Tavo Sanabri. Or however you say.
You seem to be working on a lot of theological stuff. That's cool. I like that. I appreciate that. Batman, I don't know what the hell you just said. It sounded smart as shit, but that you jumped over my head with that one. It was just like, all right.
And Batman, do I have this document that you uploaded?
Huh?
Do I have this document that you I see your link. I just want to make sure you already sent it to me in an email, right?
I can email you a PDF version amongst the other stuff that I wanted to send you.
Oh, right on. Yeah, sure.
I mean, even the dynamic omniscience one that I sent you, I redid that because I went over it a couple times and realized there were some problems. So I had to address a few issues because it's like if I come up with any like ideas, I always try to put them through the ringer, either through myself or I'll have a couple other smart friends look at them, or I'll just have like maybe Claude or ChatGPT try to find any like weaknesses or whatever every now and then. Um, but yeah, I made some adjustments, so I'll be sending you a adjusted version of that particular paper as well. And to answer the gentleman, yes, it's big brain philosophy stuff to address arguments, you know, against
big brain.
the gospel message, basically.
Big brain in a certain subset.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't understand philosophy or at least basic reasoning, you're probably not going to get some of the points that's being made. But I am going to I did add examples in there to kind of break it down so it'll be easier to understand. So
It's definitely esoteric stuff, but I would say it's accessible.
it's sick 20.
Are we still on the wheel question? I'm just asking.
Okay, so the wheel question has to do with skepticism. So here's the thing: what's cool is actually the wheel question has to do with skepticism. I expressed skepticism about claims about miraculous healing today.
Oh,
right?
okay.
I gave my reasons for it. You came up. You have your own skepticism to a different degree and for different reasons than I do. And now we're discussing skepticism, and Tavos Nabri came in my chat. And I'm like, please come up on Tareyak's chat. And then Batman also came in my chat. And, now we got all this. And then Tareyak is like, his cup runneth over with all this new information. He's going to have to get a new head at Walgreens to fit all this new stuff.
Get
Do you have Walgreens in Ireland?
Top hat, as they say. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's where it's kind of like the segues or the tangents that do kind of lead off from these prompts, which is kind of like the main kind of feature of the show kind of thing. But like we're kind of saying there, both like this whole thing of, this was like rampant in Ireland where it's like there's, because remember we brought up like the whole Nala Ray clip, and it's like you were kind of saying, it's like I hear that stuff, and I'm just like, well, clearly this has to be wrong, but that doesn't reflect what the actual teaching is or what the core message of Christianity is. And when you meet a Christian like Rex, for example, he was like the first person to say, yeah, they're talking about like Wicca, pagan type stuff, like convening with the dead and like having all these magical gifts and all this kind of stuff. That's not what Christianity is. And then we kind of led into the whole aspect of your own kind of like personal story and like the questions that you have and all this. But the one thing I would say, and I've said this to Shiva before, is that it's like if you do have an answer and you don't have anything to rebut it, then the good faith aspect is to kind of say, well, if I can't defeat this answer, then I'd have to kind of grant that as true. You get what I'm saying?
Really,
yeah. The thing is, I wouldn't want to be put in a position where if I don't have an immediate answer, that I would be forced to immediately, throw away my belief system. I think I would extend the same thing to. That's why during that time when you had that exchange, I think I was right. Of course, everybody thinks they're right, and so I thought I gave good answers. You agreed that I gave good answers on that particular panel, which, by the way,
absolutely.
What's it? Did you see that video, Buff, between me and Shiva? I mean, I know you saw Taryak's. Yeah, but I remember you were saying, you have to accept re-exam's position if he's answered all your questions sufficiently so as to leave you with no questions left. And for example, if somebody brings to me passages that they would say, well, these two things in the Bible contradict each other, well, I'm going to want to back up and be like, I think it's more my ignorance that doesn't have an answer right now, not the fact that it's a compelling fact. So I have to check up on that first.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I just like the conversation. I just like to hear people's viewpoints, man. I really do. Like exchange ideas. So I'm not, I'm not being. Oh God, I don't want to say it again. I'm not being one of these like flat Earth idiots and no, and repeat the same thing over and over and over. I like to have conversations about stuff like this. And Tareyak,
You know,
I like to show Tareyak some respect. Now I'm trying to bring that toxicity to his stream.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. But like what I mean by that whole thing of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rex, are you saying it's like if you have like no more questions and all the questions have been answered sufficiently, that would be kind of the aspect rather than the explanation? Like not being able to explain.
Running out of questions is not the same thing as having all the answers. Because if you found something that has all the answers in a way that displaces all other alternatives, then that's what truth would be, right? That because if it automatically categorically makes every other contrary impossible, that's what truth is.
Yeah, like that's what I'm trying. Like that's what I'm trying to get at in terms of the, because like a very easy example is that it's like how was this all began? Like what is the origin of like reality and all this kind of stuff? And essentially we have two supposed answers, whereas like the Christians would say God, whereas like the atheists would say nothing. And in terms of just like applying a simple bit of logic, like the whole like trying to get something from nothing, whenever we ever seen something spontaneously just come into existence, that's not the case. There's always a reason for an existence or something being, essentially. Do you know what I mean? So it's like when we have that kind of like that confrontation where it's either God or no explanation whatsoever, or like a true fact, as they like to call it now. Essentially that's where I kind of say to test whether or not someone's actually being good faith or like they're genuinely kind of like looking for an answer would be like when presented with that answer and they're not that they don't have an explanation, but there is no other explanation, that they must accept that as the truth. Otherwise they're not being good faith. I don't know if I'm explaining that 100% or not. You know what I mean?
Oh, I understand exactly what you're talking about.
What if an atheist brings up virtual particles popping in and out of existence? Like, how would you address that?
Yeah, that we simply don't have an answer to it because everything would have a reason. Otherwise, it would be in like an unreasonable position that you would say that there's things that don't have a reason.
Yeah, because then if the basis of reason is illogic, if it would be weird if the basis of the laws of logic were based on something that was the antithesis of the laws of logic rather than something that corresponds to the laws of logic and has a necessary relationship with it. So to say that, well, we live in a world based on chaos, therefore order, I mean, then why can't I speak chaotically in order to make meaning? Why can't I just put it together in a bunch of mouth noises and then make Shakespeare's works? You know, why is it why demand reason out of anybody if the chief prime mover of the universe is illogic and madness?
I mean, I think, Odin, are you asking about like virtual particles popping in and out of existence in terms of like quantum mechanics and Lawrence Krauss?
Yeah, but not for the purposes of using that to explain a possible way of how the universe can come into existence. The universe from nothing is a gross misnomer of that actual book. I was saying in reference to dealing with the issue of uncaused causes, basically.
But virtual particles do pop in and out of existence. We know that from like really good experimental evidence, but that doesn't, I don't think there's any theological implications of that. We know why they're popping in and out of existence, and we know what they are. And so I don't know that shows that there's an uncaused cause. Like if a virtual particle pops into existence, that it's happening because there's a quantum field there. So there is an actual cause. So it's not like that if a virtual particle pops out of existence, I don't say, oh, see, things can happen from nothing.
Actually, that doesn't follow. because just because the quantum field exists doesn't necessarily mean that therefore automatically virtual particles are going to pop in and out of existence. We actually, the only thing we've observed, kind of,
Oh no,
is
that's
the
it.
phenomena itself. We don't know
No. It
why.
it does. The rules of quantum mechanics predict that virtual particles will pop in and out of existence. So the question then becomes, where did those rules come from? But no one, when we saw particles popping in and out of existence, we weren't like, where did this come from? We had already predicted that behavior on a quantum level from what we already understood about quantum mechanics.
I mean, I I don't see anything in quantum physics that actually gives an explanation for that, if I'm being honest with you.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
quantum chromodynamics.
yeah, I'll look into that again.
Yeah.
I have not seen an actual explanation for it yet, but maybe
Yeah,
I missed something.
it's not something that we were surprised when we demonstrated it. We have long since had a theoretical understanding that particles will pop in and out of existence, and then we observed it experimentally long after it was predicted.
And like I would say you have it inverted or backwards in the sense of it's not that we have a quantum field, ergo we have to have like particles coming into existence or not. It's that we've observed particles seemingly coming into existence and then going out of existence. Ergo, there must be a quantum field. And like that's what I'm trying to put in terms of the proposal of like we observe reality. Ergo, there must be a why, there must be a reason or an
Yeah.
explanation to it.
But the point is that we understand why it's happening. We have a framework for why it happens. So I don't know that number one, that doesn't show that something comes out of nothing, and number two, it doesn't show effects without causation.
I like
Yeah, and like
oh, I was
just
just
real
gonna
quick
say,
to map on
sorry.
The atheist argument would just say, well, particles just come into existence. That's just a proof fact. It is what it is, and there's no such thing as a quantum field. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, look, I work in a much more applied field of physics, so I'm not like a quantum, but I do know that the particles that come in and out of existence, these are virtual quantum particles, and I know that it was something that was theoretically predicted before we had. So we had the reason why it's happening before we had an empirical observation of it. So it wasn't like we're not surprised by it. In other words, in other words, there's nothing it doesn't show an effect without a cause. It shows that virtual particles emerge from the quantum foaminess of the underlying fabric of time and space. This is a pretty esoteric question, but I don't, and we probably don't have time to like derive all the quantum mechanical effects that predict this, but they are derivable, and they're.
I mean, I know the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, I believe it's called, um, is supposed to explain the phenomena itself, right? But I don't know that it explains like what causes them to pop in and out of existence. And I say pop, I say that in air quotes, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, I don't know is totally applicable. That basically talks about how you can't know the momentum and position precisely at the same time without collapsing the waveform.
Speaking of which, that's actually something I addressed in one of my papers that I called Battle of the Blocks, where I
Oh yeah,
pit,
yeah, 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 yeah. Block theory. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah, I pit the growing block universe versus the static block universe, and see which one of them is actually more coherent as a explanation. Um, I'm not saying the goal is to not prove one wrong, because there's really no way we can prove either, like either wrong. Like, the only way you can do it is to be outside of the universe and observe it, right? But I think from a functional perspective and from an Occam's razor perspective, I think the growing block universe is a better explanation of reality. I think you will definitely enjoy that paper, even though it's a foundation for my God's Omniscience paper.
I did read at least part of that paper, and I liked it. Again, it's quite esoteric. I don't think that means it's inaccessible, but
Yeah. But that was something that I briefly touched on in the paper, in that paper as well.
But gentlemen, we're going to take this time to take a little bit of a break. Now is the perfect time. If you got any spare coinage, help donate the show. We're up to $55 in the spin bank, so I have a feeling we're going to be spinning when we get back. But now is the perfect time. Stretch your legs, get the circulation going. Remind it to get the stretching going, all this kind of stuff. Also, drain the bladders, refresh the drinks, and grab the popcorn, folks. Like I said, we're coming into the final third of the show, the final 2 hours. Make sure you get the rolls going, as they say. Until then, I'm going to put the curtains down, throw the banner up, and ladies and gentlemen, other than that, enjoy the music. We shall be right back.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. Yeah, I'm feeling good. Rainbows and gleaming, you know how I feel. Clover patch scheming, you know how I feel. Little green man dreaming, you know how I feel. He's a grifting leprechaun and I'm helping with his gold. Yeah, we're feeling good. Kettle, you know how I feel. Jig on the pebble, you know how I feel. Shillelagh and treble, you know how I feel. He's a sly little trickster, but his heart's made of gold. Feeling good, stars when you shine, you know how I feel. Scent of the pine, you know how I feel. Freedom is mine and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And that leprechaun's pot is overflowing with gold. Yeah, we're feeling good. Fish in the sea, river running
it's a new day, it's a new life for me. Me and my grifting leprechaun. We're feeling good. Yeah, we're feeling good.
In the merry month of scams, from me hidden lair I started, left the suckers crying, their wallets nearly parted, saluted me old ma, who popped some Tylenol, made me slow of wit, but a trickster after all. Then off to spin the yarn, leave where I was born, cut a shamrock crook to charm the fools and nobles, a pot of rainbow gold, promising the bold, and swindling all the cold on the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full all the raw. In Mullingar that night, I rested limbs so weary, started by day next morning bright and early, took a drop of the pure to keep me heart from sinking. That's the Tareyak's cure whenever he's on for drinking. To see the lassies smile, laughing all the while at me curious style, 'twould set your heart a bubbling. They asked me was I hired, the wages I required, till I was almost tired of the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the rock. In Dublin next arrived, I thought it such a pity to be so soon deprived of view of that fine city. Then I took a stroll, all among the quality, me bundle it was stole in a neat locality. Something crossed me mind when I looked behind, no bundle could I find upon me stick a wobbling, and while I'm for the road, they said me Connaught brogue wasn't much in vogue on the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the rock. From there I got away, me spirits never failing, landed on the quay just as the ship was sailing. Captain at me roared, said that no room had he. When I jumped aboard, a cabin found for Tareyak. Down among the pigs, I played some funny rigs, danced some hearty jigs, the water round me bubbling. Went off holy head, I wish myself was dead, or better far instead, on the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the rock. The boys of Liverpool, when we safely landed, called myself a fool. I could no longer stand it, blood began to boil, temper I was losing, poor old Aaron's Isle, they began abusing. Hurrah me soul, says I, me shillelagh I let fly. Galway boys were by, saw I was a hobbling, with the loud hooray, they joined in the affray. We quickly cleared the way for the rocky road to Grifton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hunt the mark and turn 'em down the rocky road, all the way to Grifton, whack full of the rock. Now with me little leprechauns, we're grifting through the nations. Tareyak leads the band, promising donations. Send your gold our way for a cause so grand and true. We'll charm your coins away and vanish in the blue. Me ma's Tylenol twist gave me wits to trick and tease. Retarded charm they say, but I bring 'em to their knees. Join the merry scam, donate quick and free, for the pot of gold's a sham.
And we're back, folks, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Mad Cow Moo over on the Ko-Fi with the $2. We are now officially up to 59 in the wheel bank. What do you think, gentlemen? Should we spin the wheel? Yay or nay? He says spin that motherfucking wheel. Gentlemen, is same-sex sexual activity sinful for Christians according to Scripture?
Is it not?
It's sinful for everybody according to Scripture. There's no such law that is moral, that is only binding to Christians and will not be held against people who aren't Christians. I mean, I believe it's Acts 17:30 that says the former times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent. That's the same standard across the board.
Don't wait, it's in there. You know the verse. Where is it? It talks about man shall not lay with man.
Yeah, there's Leviticus 18, there's Romans 1:27. I mean, you got Old and New Testament.
Absolutely.
Tareyak, maybe I'm the last person you want in your wheel because I have like one sentence answers that kind of tie it up pretty easily.
Well, like the way I kind of like look at it is like even from like the whole like parade shit that we have going on now. Like, there's a reason why they call it like Pride and all this kind of shit. Pride coming before the fall as well, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's so ominous. Go ahead.
Because like fundamentally, like a lot of them would be like, oh, like this was actually, I had a conversation with Damon about this, where like if you're a murderer, right, but you're Christian, like you're going there to like to repent and to acknowledge like what you've done was wrong. You know what I mean? Well, why is it that we see this phenomenon of like LGBTQ churches? And like you have to accept me the way like that's not a mentality that you would have in terms of like any of this. You know what I mean? Like this whole like push for like inclusivity and the whole trans thing, the gays thing, and all this kind of shit. It's one of these things because it basically like sex loses all meaning when you start doing the same sex thing and all this kind of shit. Like the fundamental basis for creation, like that act is like the for lack of a better word, like the divineness of that act is to breathe life into this planet, into this world, right? And what they've done is they basically kind of like inverted that to the max, where it's like, again, like bringing up Plato with the whole aspect of like the lowest form of the lowest, like the tyrant is a slave to his pleasures, which again, like breeds up in terms of like this aspect where it's like, They completely just try to invert everything and then to act like you're the evil one for standing against it. You know what I mean? Which, I mean,
well, I've got atheists in my chat calling me a bigot at this point and leaving. So, I mean, I don't think that there is an ontology that says that you are a male, which is, clearly made for females and vice versa. The sexes are meant for each other exclusively. I don't think there's any dispute about that. There is no homosexual organ. There is no organ that corresponds with the same sex in either a reproductive or sexual way. That has to be like engineered in order for that to happen. Tavo, go ahead.
Oh, I would disagree. I think that there's a neutral reading of the relevant scriptural resources does not produce the conclusion that same-sex sexual activity is sinful.
Okay, well then we have a fundamental disagreement, but I still like you, Tavo.
Oh, I still like you guys too, yeah. But I don't see anything sinful about same-sex sexual activity, and I don't think the relevant scriptural resources are particularly clear.
So when you look at Romans 1:27, when it talks about men burning with passion for each other as a form of judgment, how do you interpret that?
So Paul, I group the statements of Paul into two categories. One category is where he says like vice lists. And I think if he were singling this out and saying, look, like any kind of homosexual intimacy, any intimacy between people of the same gender is sinful and wrong, I think that would be much more clear. But in the first category, what he does is he lists off a bunch of things that are happening in these communities. right? Now you have to remember that at this time there was essentially no way to be what's the right word, to be sexually promiscuous with people of the opposite gender without creating more pregnancies, right? There was no sexual procreation, right? There was no transgender intimacy without the risk of procreation, without the risk of pregnancy. Does that make sense? So if you wanted to be more promiscuous during this era, you had to engage in more sexual activity with people of the same gender as you. In order, that was the only way to do safe sex. That was the only way to have not, does that make sense?
I don't see that as like a pragmatic move. I would say that would be, I mean, but in Romans 1, it talked about rejecting the natural use of the woman. It's a form of judgment, like God giving them over. Like that's characteristic of God too, that says the backslider heart be filled with his ways. And the same thing is true in Psalm 73 when the person is fat and they are full of their riches and they've rejected God. And so God just gives them up to their riches as their idols. Same thing with Israel in the wilderness. They wanted meat and they were not satisfied with the manna God gave them. So he said, I'll give you meat. I'll give you so much meat it's going to come out your nostrils. And then when they were still eating, he struck them with a plague through the thing that they wanted. So it's just thematically characteristic of God to give people over to their sins as a form of judgment. And that's what Romans 1 is describing.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with this.
But Jam, I do hate to interrupt, but we do have a request to spin the wheel from chat. So we got to play the clip.
Oh, no. Anyway, last week...
We got to spin that wheel and we got a guest backstage as well. And it's actually, believe it or not, it's actually a gay rights activist.
We bring in the studio this morning one of the gay rights activists, Mr. Should I call you Mr.?
Mr. Bricky, welcome to the show.
Hello. That was dark.
I just give you a warning. Bricky's a wild one. That's why we love him. But Bricky, I guess you can kind of kickstart us with this. Bricky, can Christians reconcile the belief in evolution with the biblical creation account?
Is it a yes or no answer?
No. We do need reasoning, rationalization.
Right. Can Christians reconcile belief in evolution with the biblical? Evolution doesn't exist in my eyes, so I'm just going to stop you right there. It's adaptation. So, biblical creation account. I'm not really good on the Bible yet. I'm studying it a little bit more, but I don't believe in evolution. So that's where I'll stand my ground, right? Fuck evolution.
Fair point. Rex, I know you're chomping at the bit.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. So I remember there's a debate between Jim Bob and Redeemed Zoomer, and Jim Bob did the exact move I would have done, which is go to Romans 5, which refers to Adam as a real person. Through one man, sin and death came into the world, and then it correlates that to Christ by one man. We are saved, essentially. If you read Romans chapter 5, you'll see that whole breakdown. But if Adam is just some kind of illustration of Neanderthals running around in a world of creatures of life that just take shapes, and that's just one of them, then you have a problem of like, okay, well then Adam's not real, so then Romans 5 is false because Romans 5 characterizes one man through which sin came into the world. And they have a lot of theories. I think they tried to use that to get around it, but I don't agree with those theories. Tavo, I'm interested in your take on this.
My answer to the question is, I suppose, yes. But I mean, can Christian? Yeah, I don't think you.
No, we do need your reasoning. Tareyak did just specify to me that he needed reasoning from us. So if I've got to give fucking reasoning, right, dickhead, you have.
Tavo, this is Bricky, by the way. Bricky is Bricky, and you will learn very quickly.
He's British.
Yeah, no.
Hello, Tavo. How you doing, young chap? I'm just a British wanker.
Yeah, I'm a Canadian wanker, I suppose. So nice to meet you. But yeah, I mean,
you're one of them gay wankers, aren't you? You're one of them gay wankers, aren't you?
I'm one of them. Them what?
Them gay wankers.
Giddy?
Gay. He's saying gay.
I happen to not be.
Spit it out, Junior. Come on, just tell her you're in a safe space.
We have exited the highbrow portion of tonight's broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, and now
listen.
we begin.
Have I brought the intellectual level of the stream down?
Listen, every fairy tale needs a villain.
Every fairy tale needs a good old-fashioned villain.
And Bricky's here to fill that role, ladies and gentlemen.
Plus Tareyak gets money from the government for having me here, right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Well, to provide more rationalization, yeah, there's no. It's not. I don't think a biblical creation account contradicts anything that we see in the evolutionary record, the biological record, or the cosmological record, for that matter. My justification for that is that, if you're omnipotent, omniscient, and omnitemporal, and you write all of the laws for the universe, then you don't need to create any one-off acts of quote-unquote magic or any supernatural transgressions to create a desired outcome.
Wait there. We are literally going to have to get the thesaurus out right now, because you said a lot of words there that I have never even heard of yet understand. But we'll skip past that, right? We will.
Well, I don't really know what a wanker is, so I think we're sort of even.
A tosser.
That definitely doesn't help when you're talking to somebody from across the pond, Bricky.
A masturbator.
There you go.
Well, I don't think you mean that literally. Just like in Canada, we have the word.
No,
hoser.
I do. No, I definitely do.
Well, I mean, in Canada, like the word hoser is like a fond but sometimes pejorative word. But
he's using more words. He's already confusing us again. He's using other words now.
No. I just mean that the analogy is that it doesn't.
Stop it! Stop fucking using big words.
Do you know who Danny Sapko is?
I know who Diddy is.
No, Danny Sapko.
I thought you said Diddy.
No. Danny Sapko. He's a bass player. He's a bass player.
I know what a bass is. I know what a bass is, right? But I don't know who you're referencing. I don't even know.
His voice sort of sounds like yours, and you have a similar sense of humor. So
I haven't got a sense of humor. Okay. Does he think I'm going to be fucking funny or something? I'm not a fucking monkey.
Wait, hold up. You say you didn't have a sense of humor, and now you say monkeys are funny. Which is it, Bricky?
Well, they work for peanuts, aren't they? And
I'm sorry, you got some peanut butter on the roof of your mouth? What are you saying?
It's peanut butter jelly time.
Of course. So
anyway, you start with me, you little twat, you, right? Okay. We've had some interactions, me and you. We have, and you're kind of like you're that good cop, bad cop rolled into one. Do you know what I mean?
So I'm Jekyll and Hyde cop.
You're a burrito that was reheated, right? Okay, and
the best kind. Cold. Thank you.
So I do appreciate the fact you can understand me, though. I do, right? And the fact you're translating to a fucking Canadian. When you're on an Irishman's panel, and you need.
I am an Irishman by descent.
No, not you.
Sir.
I'm talking about him.
Yeah.
He can't understand me, but he's on an Irishman's panel. You don't speak Irish. You don't.
No, but I do speak gibberish, and I can translate. I am.
Well, fluent. I speak bullshit, right? And I don't even understand it. So beat that.
Well, to be fair,
also I've seen enough Liam Gallagher footage to kind of pigeon away, what you're saying. Go ahead, Terry.
To be fair to Bricky, though, it's like he is British. Like like English is not his first language.
Bloody fucking bastard! You fucking talking to me like that.
This is the type of language that
Bricky understands.
Durka, Muhammad Jihad.
He's got the like squiggly lines out and all this kind of shit. But he's doing well. He's doing well.
Hey, Buff, what do you think of the prompt?
What's the prompt? Hold on.
Can Christians reconcile belief in evolution with the biblical creation account? And it's not a yes or no answer because I tried to get that one right. You need to give context.
Could they reconcile with the belief in evolution? I'm gonna say no. As Christians are stuck in the oh Jesus.
Oh, he's more drunk than fucking me. You're gonna get more sense
No,
out
I'm
of
trying
me
to
than
figure out
him.
how to answer this question. The biblical creation. See, the problem starts with creation, but I don't want to go
Doesn't it
that
start with
route.
can? The prompt actually starts with can, not creation. Creation is a 1, 2, 3.
No, creation
4,
is in the
7, 8.
question.
Creation
Calm
is the
down.
10th word in the prompt. And it's
Yeah,
actually
it
one
is.
before the last
I'm
one, so
trying
it
to-
doesn't know when you start with it. Sorry for being pedantic.
Awesome. I mean, the faith of Christianity is based on creation.
It doesn't say nothing about
Isn't it
based
believe in
there.
evolution?
For fuck's sake, Tareyak, give him a slap.
Wow, could I answer? I don't know.
Well, we would love you too, but we've sat here for like 30 fucking countdown sessions.
All right, the answer is no.
What's the justification?
No, you go. No, he's going to answer for me, or at least talk over while I try to answer.
Okay, Bricky, it's your fault that he cannot expound. It's all your fault.
Well,
the trick with Bricky. One second, I need to give Buff the translation for Bricky. All right, the key to Bricky is just to tell him.
Or, here's another idea that's going to be very controversial. You could shut the fuck up.
Bricky loves to be controversial, so you got to hit him with the controversial. Just tell him to shut the fuck up, put him in his corner, and then, you know what I mean, hit us with the answer, you know what I mean?
But bear this in mind, right? I do better fighting off the ropes, right? Okay, so just because I'm backed into the corner doesn't mean I'm fucking done.
True.
So, Tavo, when it says in Genesis 1 how it talks about every creature bringing forth from its kind, is that not a limiting principle to what a creature can bring forth in its posterity?
Well, not really. And my justification for that is every single creature in the history of the earth has always begotten another creature of its kind, right? But over time, there can be marginal incremental change each time that iteration occurs, right? So it's not like a dolphin will give rise to a duck, right? But over time, species can drift in their morphologies, phenotypes, genetics.
Yeah,
so,
I'm actually more informed than most Christians, I think, about what evolution is actually proposing and how it works in its processes. Like you said, genetic drift, random mutation, adaptation, natural selection, all those things. I understand the concept, but would you say that given enough time, a paramecium will give rise to a rabbit?
No.
I would say that, yeah.
Nope. I'd say no.
That's not what evolution says at all.
It does though. It says that it says that a single-celled organism is the responsible for all biodiversity, including plants and animals.
So
that's a Kent Hovind argument.
My answer. When you say paramecium, I think you're being sort of like analogy. You're giving
just analogy, not specifically a paramecium, but a single-celled organism.
Yeah, so what you're saying is God didn't create us.
Well, what he said, he is proposing sort of a theistic evolution. I believe that's incompatible with the Bible. And I mean, let me ask you this, Tava. When do you think moral agency gave rise?
Yeah, that's a harder question. I would say it's sort of part of the evolution of theory of mind. But I would say that, I would think that chimpanzees, bonobos have some form of moral agency. I think any creature that has the ability to perceive suffering in another creature has some degree of moral agency, but definitely theory of mind was an important quantum step in the development of moral agency.
Because God gave with that feeling, right? Empathy.
No. It's just because without theory of mind, you don't really understand.
Where does evolution come? Why is a rock still a rock? Why is a monkey or a chimpanzee still a chimpanzee? What are we eventually going to evolve into? If we look at people on this earth, human beings, there are people that are still living in mud huts and shitting in holes, right? Okay. Even though they've been here for millions of years, when are they going to evolve to having a toilet? You know,
that's not evolution. That's a societal norm.
No, well, because it's adaptation.
When is my Android going to become an iPhone? That's what I want to know.
Well,
when am I going to get that sweet camera?
Why hasn't my iPhone evolved into
If
a
evolution? If you're saying evolution is a thing, it should evolve into something better, shouldn't it?
Well, here's
my non-living material should evolve.
No, fuck this shit. No, fuck this. No. Come on.
Let the creationists tell you. So, Bricky, what evolution is not proposing is that it's necessarily making a value claim of what's better. It would be what is suited to its environment has a higher likelihood.
Adaptation.
Right. So they would say that the combination of random mutation, adaptation, genetic drift, and natural selection is going to produce better success, which shows itself in different shapes and biological structures that are formed by the pressures of the environment around it. So it wouldn't be like I'm a human and there's this force independent of my environment called evolution that's going to eventually make all my grandkids turn to Superman. That's not what evolution is.
Yeah, and if I could just dovetail on that briefly, I think there's another important thing, which is the problem with applying the rules of evolution in the Anthropocene is that we are now in an era where evolutionary pressures have been redefined, right? That's why humans aren't still evolving, because like my parents didn't have 6 kids and then like the forces of nature killed off 2 of them depending on what their skill set was. That's just
so they're evolving.
Well, no, I'm saying we're not really still evolving because there's no more evolutionary pressures. And the evolutionary pressures that do exist are largely artificial or secondarily naturalistic. And I'll just give you an example of that, right? If we have bred, chickens to produce more eggs, we've bred cows to have more edible meat on them. So we are now sort of changing the laws of evolution. We breed dogs to certain breeds that we perceive to be cuter.
That's called adapting them.
Well, it's artificial selection is what it is, right? So it's no longer natural selection.
But
so
even evolution, in the terms you're using, evolution, not one of us have been alive long enough to witness any kind of evolution. And if we were, right, it was what? That fucking graph they show us in school from a monkey standing more upright and whatnot to the sense where it's a man. But where did it come from?
The chiropractor.
It came from the sea.
Sorry, I had to.
You had to what? What did you do? Did you fart? Listen, I'm being fucking serious. Yeah, he's all full of shit. Adaptation is the key. Evolution is full of shit. Right? Okay. Why the fuck? Listen, why are there people on this earth that have a different skin color to us because of where they live?
Well, don't ask Darwin. You'll get an answer that's a little outdated by today's fashion. But
I'm genuinely. I look at if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm genuinely asking you. I don't know all the answers.
It would just be a pigmentation that we get from our parents. It's heritable traits from our parents.
But why? Why though?
Because of adaptation and environmental pressures, and there you go.
Nothing to do with evolution, is it?
Not in our view, but in their view, it's the same processes that give certain descendants certain common ancestries. The same processes that give them variety is what gave rise to all biodiversity, meaning all varieties of life, and that's where you and I would differ from the evolution advocates. Now, Tava, one more question based on Genesis.
Just really quick, if I could address the last question because I think it is important. The problem with applying those rules to things like changes in skin tone are because, again, we are artificially selecting different environments. So right now we are in an era where if somebody is very oligopigmented in their cutaneous, lesser melanin, there are certain areas that they can't go to if they're just going to live off the land without shelter, right? So over time, what happens is humans drift and their geographical distribution shifts slightly. Now, if we were in the natural state where Darwinian evolution was taking hold, what would happen is you would see things like, a mother has 6 children, one of those children is darker, that child would be better equipped to live in an area that has more sun and would have, fewer bad sequelae like sunburns and skin cancer.
Why would that child be darker if it was born from the same mother?
That baby don't look like me.
Changes.
That's not my fucking baby. You been
Where were you? Where were you this past Christmas?
Changes in allele frequency. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, you can ask your question, Rex.
So, do you believe that humans have a unique moral responsibility to how they manage the earth, as is shown in Genesis 1, where we're supposed to dominate it and subdue it and be fruitful, multiply, spread over it?
I think we have a moral responsibility in that we can poison the environment if we want to, and we have chosen to do that, and that's a morally bad action. I wouldn't make that same moral judgment about a species of ants moving into an area where they're invasive. Like, that's not those ants aren't.
No, I agree with you on that question there, my friend. I agree with you. We should go forth and multiply.
But what I'm saying is, do we have a distinct responsibility native to humanity to dominate the earth? Like, we are actually in charge.
Yes.
I wouldn't use the word dominate. I would, like, in other words, we don't need to exert our authority over the universe. And I think the original Hebrew language is, translated in a way that's somewhat lossy and compressive, meaning that, I think if we were in this, it would be better morally for us to live in a way that's more harmonious with the environment.
Okay.
Whose novel? Which novels?
If you read Genesis 9:2, it says well, I'll start with verse 1. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird in the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. To me, that is a very clear indication of our ownership, not only of that, but and they're subduing. But I mean, it says the fear. And if you think about it, there is kind of a natural fear that animals have of humans, by and large, that they don't share nearly as much with each other. There's something that's a little different about us, and that's kind of naturally, I think, intuitively understood by animals.
Yeah, I agree with that. The question is, ought we exert our authority in a way that subjugates other animals? I don't think that's an ought. I don't think that's a moral ought from this reading.
I'm not saying that we should domesticate every deer and squirrel and everything. I'm just saying that is the earth ours to manage in a very real moral sense?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. But again, I would agree with that. Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is like Alex O'Connor himself has said, if we're made in the image of God and you believe in evolution, then we have a problem of degrees, because then we have, I think, watered down what it means to be made in the image of God and in the likeness of God. If all in the likeness of God means is we have down the gradient achieved some level of cognition to recognize some impression of what is good and bad that we also share with chimps who are not going to heaven.
Yeah, I mean, I mean.
Bye, Buff.
Oh, good to
see you,
Buff
says he has to go take a call, but appreciate you stopping by, Buff.
Auf Wiedersehen, Buff.
Buff, I really genuinely hope that we talk again. I genuinely hope that you check out the CTF argument on my channel too. I think you'll be at least illuminated by it a little bit. What was the question, Rex?
So the question was, Alex O'Connor brought up that if you believe in evolution and you want to have the God of the Bible, at least specifically, then you have a problem of degrees in terms of what does it actually mean to be made in the image of God? Because not only is the narrative of Genesis 1 very particular about God's creation of Adam in Genesis 1 and 2, there's also this sense of like it waters down what it means to be made in the image of God if all that means is that your frontal lobe and your brain is developed enough to come to certain conclusions about value claims or something that you share with chimps who aren't going to be with us in heaven, and that God didn't die for the same chimps that seem to have some overlap in terms of how they behave.
Oh, I like the way you just put that there.
Thank you.
That's making me warm more towards you. It is genuinely, right? Even though, like, we started off on the right foot where I questioned you and brought your bullshit up, right? But evolution is bullshit, isn't it? God created us in His image, and we did not come from a big fucking bang. It's like, have you ever went to a restaurant with
Well,
a
Big
fucking
Bang's like a
atheist?
whole separate issue. That you like there's evolution, abiogenesis, Big Bang, and different other things that they separate. So I try to keep it all like one thing at a time. But yeah,
So can I genuinely ask you a question, right? Okay, you know how these like atheists and non-believers, they don't believe in a creator.
Yeah.
But if you were to take a watch, for example, or even a gourmet meal, and you were to put it on an atheist's wrist, or you were to lay it down in front of an atheist and let him eat it, or her eat it. If you ask them, would there be a chef there at the end of it, right? Or would there be a creator? All them parts didn't come together by chance. I'm struggling to deal with the information I have. I may sound pretty dumb when I do this, but I don't give a shit because I'm asking these questions sincerely for my own gain and fucking the path I'm on. So the creator is definitely there in more than one sense.
I agree with the direction where you're coming from. I think the atheist response is typically, well, we've observed chefs making food, we've observed watchmakers making watches, and therefore we have the ready, parsimonious explanation, meaning the easiest explanation to come to, rather than we have not seen universes coming from a god to their satisfaction, and therefore that's why they feel they can be still safe being skeptical. Tavo, I know we're kind of suspending your answer for my previous question, so if you want, you can answer mine and then Bricky's if that's cool.
Yeah, sure. What was your question then, and then what was Bricky's?
So it goes back to Alex O'Connor when he says that if you
Okay, yeah.
The chimp problem, we'll call it the chimp problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I've had this conversation with a lot of Christians about do other animals go to heaven? Is there any chance that any other animal will be in heaven? I'm not sure that I have a satisfactory answer on that, and I'm pretty agnostic on that question. But I think when it comes to we are made in God's image, I don't think God looks literally anthropomorphic or humanoid.
Oh, I don't believe that either.
Yeah,
I believe image means something different in that case than your physical body construct. Yeah.
Yeah, like in other words, we are made of spirals. Perhaps God has some sort of a spiral morphology. We are made of lots of empty space. Maybe God is something that encompasses a lot of space. Is that sort of thing. So I don't know why I do think we have we're at a qualitatively different level because we can destroy other things. We can destroy parts of the ecosystem. In that way, I think some of the language used in Genesis is prescient, but I don't know that really makes dogs or cats or other animals less special. Maybe they're just sort of on a hierarchy of consciousness, and we exist on sort of the upper end of that hierarchy.
Well, I think we need to divide something here because you were talking about morality among primates, like the higher apes, as they're called. There's a problem with that because it would either mean that these primates are going to hell if we're using morality in the same way that we would talk about humans, or that Jesus as a human, I mean, he wouldn't have died for the sins of non-human moral agents.
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. It's a reasonable objection. That's why I say I'm sort of agnostic on some of these questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a good friend who's Christian who is very, very certain that she will see her dog when she goes to heaven. I find it very difficult to really come up with any response to that. I trust in God to make that to perform the execution of justice in that regard. I have actually given this a lot of thought. but I remain agnostic. In other words, I don't know if her dog will go to heaven. If her dog does, I mean, if her dog can go to heaven, can a really bad dog go to hell? I mean,
Well, that's the thing. I think there's a definitive moral category that animals are not moral agents. Only humans are moral agents. Animals may appear to act moral because they are created by a God who is good, and in varying degrees, some species will display that more than others. But that's a reflection of the God who made them, not a reflection of something intrinsic to themselves. I mean, God also uses many illustrations of animals who do care, in some way, like a mother hen and their chicks. I would have gathered you, Israel, Jerusalem, like a mother hen and her chicks. But then it also talks about animals that just don't care, like the ostrich that crushes the eggs in her nest. So that's, but when we're going to say moral and we're going to attribute it to some kind of pattern, I mean, if you look at I think it's my it's my second moral argument marathon video. There's a guy named Simos, and he says, well, we see this reciprocity among chimps, and therefore that's proof that we have morality among chimps. And I point out that that's circular, because just because you have a linear experiment that from beginning to end, you've proven that there is reciprocal behavior, you haven't proven that that reciprocal behavior is necessarily moral, because morality is not something that you can display in the movement of matter one way or the other. You have to either come in with that assumption or come in without that assumption. But to say that a process that is shows a behavior proves that it is therefore moral, you had to already bring that to the table to begin with. But he didn't see that. There's a book here actually on abortion called Clarity by Chris Iverson, and I'm trying to find the section where he goes over the definition of being made in God's image. But you can go ahead as I'm looking for that.
No, I think you're raising a good point. It sounds like that argument for morality among chimpanzees or bonobos, usually the argument is made for bonobos since they have more of a social structure. It sounds like that argument is circular. I mean, but again, I don't know what it's like to be a bonobo. I don't know what it's like to be a chimpanzee. There's certainly evidence that they exhibit behavior of caring for others, and that seems very real. It seems like, elephants have very, very close relationships. They bond for life. That seems to me a lot like if I can say that I have a soul, how can I say that an elephant doesn't have a soul based on that experiential analysis? But I don't have a really good answer for this. Again, I'm kind of agnostic on the question, but it seems to me that if God creates nature and says that all this nature is good, then there is some redemption to be found in all of that nature. If I can say that I have a soul, it seems problematic for me to tell this Christian who had a dog that she really bonded with that dog does not have a soul by any reasonable criteria. So I don't have a good answer to this. I don't know how to reconcile this with a relevant. Yeah, I mean, this is a hard question. I trust in God to yield a just outcome for other creatures in the world, but I don't know how that's going to happen.
Well, I think again, parse, let's say that for the sake of argument, that there is a kind of soul that the animal has that animates that body, right? It would still not be a moral agent. You could posit a soul that does not contain moral agency that God could make if you want to. But
let me ask you a question. Are souls atomic? Are they monolithic? Right? I don't think the Bible actually ever says clearly that they are.
Expound on that so a 5-year-old can understand what we mean by atomic and monolithic.
What you mean? You mean me?
What? No, I don't mean you.
Aren't you? Isn't it past your bedtime? Oh wait, what time is it over there in medieval Europe?
Never mind. I can't tell the time yet. Okay, I'm still too young.
Medieval, I think, is an overstatement. You know what I mean? Like, based on the amount of fucking immigrants were mass importing, bro. We're going back to the Stone Age at this rate. But it's 10 to 8. So it's just coming up to the breakfast time for Bricky, you know what I mean? We got about an hour left in the show as well, so we actually be perfect timing just for breakfast, when we finish,
I'll probably have to get off in about 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, but I lost my track of the question.
So you were asking if I thought souls were monolithic or atomic.
Oh, yeah. Is there anything in the Bible that clearly states that souls are atomic? In other words, cannot be subdivided into parts. In other words, the Carl Jung conceptualization that we're all part of one larger oversoul. Is there anything in Christianity that debunks that says we have individual atomic souls, and we continue to exist as individual persons in whatever post, judgment phase that we enter after this life.
You would, so hold on. Just make sure I understand. Are you saying that we would be of one and the same soul before and after, or of one and the same soul only after life?
I die. What happens to my soul? Does it stay me? Does it stay identifiably a circumscribed?
Yes. So here's how you can know, because when Jesus is looking at the thief on the cross, he's saying, today you will be with me in paradise, or when it talks about, say, Lazarus and the rich man, right? The Lazarus and the rich man are ending up in different places, and they are individuals. And this individual, who is the rich man, is in hell, and he's suffering, and he's telling Moses from afar, or Abraham from afar, send Lazarus to, dip his finger in water so as to cool my tongue, or at least send somebody to warn my family about this place, right? So he still has a familiar relationship with people who are still alive on earth that other people don't share with him, with each other.
Okay, I guess I see that. In terms of the thief, I don't think that necessarily proves that souls are atomic, but but I think your second one is a reasonable.
Yeah, perhaps the first one was a little more knee jerk, and I needed to refine my approach a little bit. But I tend to think you in the singular doesn't mean you are going to be, downloaded into the terabyte, hive mind that I've collected. It seems like, okay. So here's another example. Like, I don't know how much. Like, I think Revelation, the first 3 chapters are pretty clear compared to the rest of Revelation. But one of the things that it says that you'll be given a new name, which only I know. And those who have, again, I guess it's hard to prove that that's a singular name to each individual. It's an interesting question. I've never actually posed that. I've just always supposed that the individuals were saved, as it talks about. Yeah, I'd probably have to find.
Listen, how do we not know that a Jesus version of a dog came down, and a cat, and a pig, and all these other animals and creatures on this planet, and spoke to them like he spoke to us humans, right? We don't know that. So if they do, they will go to the heaven. It will just be a different heaven, like a dog heaven.
No, because dogs are not made in the image of God.
No, but dogs were made by God. God did create all creatures as well, didn't he?
Okay, but they're not made in the image of God, so they wouldn't have that
I didn't say they were. You're conflating me words, yeah.
Here's the problem with that. Then you're saying that God. Then you're saying that God comes and inhabits an animal body.
No, you're not going to know. I said to you, what if they had their own version of somebody that came down? And yes, you will get dogs, wolves, cats, and fucking rhinos that may sin according to their version of it, but we don't fucking know what's going. So you tell your friend that her dog may go to heaven, doggy heaven, as long as it wasn't gay, a murderer, right? Okay, or Muslim, and then it's going to get there, But if it's any of them things, it's probably not going to.
I think I speak for all dogs when I say, Ricky, grow up you tick. What are you talking about, dog heaven? Unbelievable. Like, what do you mean a dog
Bricky,
Jesus came down and talked to all dogs?
Nonsense.
What's going on here?
It was a Jesus.
Jesus. Unbelievable.
Hey, listen. Come on, you were getting a little bit fucking in depth on that there. Can't you just tell that it's a fucking dog? Just bury the cunt in the back garden and be done with it.
But like, when have you ever seen an animal make a fire?
I've seen animals on fire.
Yeah, but when have they made a fire? Like when you look at the aspect of like technology.
Listen, if you watch a rat when you've poured fucking gasoline over it, right? Okay, if it runs into the neighbor's garden shed, it sets the fuck alight.
Hey, Tabo, what about people whose names are written in the book of life, and then there's a reference to asking not to be blotted out of the book of life? It seems pretty singular.
That points towards that points towards souls being atomic, I would say. But I find Revelations very hard to deal with, even though I've read it several times. I find it just be very, very metaphorical.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
it's a fair point. I tend to steer clear from it, but everything I've read indicates to me atomic, and there's not even a hint of like hive mind collective afterlife that I've seen.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, again,
Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. That's Romans 9, and that's also, of course, in the Torah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of these are questions that I'm struggling with, that I'm agnostic about. They're questions that I haven't fully resolved. Like when I go into a debate setting or I talk about the CTF, that's like definitely me in my wheelhouse talking about things that I've thought about a lot. This is definitely me working out things that I haven't really worked out. So
no, I love it.
I see what you're
the
saying.
more you bring to me, the better, because it helps me like reassess like how I just categories. It's so enriching to have like tough questions in such a way that makes
I do feel like it's really hard to say to someone who loves their dog, you're going to go to heaven and be in the ultimate paradise forever. Your dog
Is
will
it
not.
fuck?
Is
it fuck?
Okay, Bricky, hold on. Let me tango with this. I, as a policy, am silent where the Bible is silent, vague where the Bible is vague, and explicit where the Bible is explicit. And seeing as
great strategy. I see where you're going with this, but keep going. Keep going.
And so, as far as whether or not people's individual pets are in heaven, I can neither confirm nor deny. I will neither discourage nor encourage.
See, that's a bit of a get out clause to me, that there, right? I would just see your dog's dead, deal with the fucker, right? Okay, shit's gonna happen.
Dr. Bricky, everybody. It's like Dr. Phil, but English style,
Look, I'm not gonna beat around the fucking bush, yeah, right? But your dog may be buried under one, right? So just get on with it. It's a dead dog, right? You're gonna have family members that have or will die, right? In fact, did nobody know this? You will eventually die as well.
Hey, Bricky, what if you have a family member who was a dog and their master died? What would you tell that dog?
If I had a family member that was a dog, and I would be the master. So, if I had a family
that's a theologically correct answer, by the way.
On that as well, I want to shout out Ghost Rider with the $2 says, found this in my nephew's car seat, no Skittles. Hey, man, appreciate you for the $2. And also just to let everyone know, the gift thing, I have no clue what the gift thing is, but I finally realized that's what's been like popping up, or the sound I've been hearing that you guys can't hear. But appreciate you the gifts, but I've no way to keep track. Even on the YouTube studio, it's not telling me how many gifts we've got and all this kind of stuff as well. But I appreciate you for the gifts as well, and I apologize for not shouting that out earlier. But like, would we not agree though that like that humans are like distinct from like animals in that sense of like the example I gave, it's kind of like a crude example, but like you've never seen like a monkey or a dog or any of these animals like make a fire, which would be like a basis or like a fundamental thing to show like technology, and like that's what kind of like separates us.
I wouldn't use that, because if you watch my Moral Argument Marathon 2, they talk about, animals, used to think they don't have languages, they don't have communities, they don't use tools, they don't do this interaction or that interaction or this novelty or that novelty. And they can come up with physical phenomena that would be reasonably understood as doing things that we might see as common human conventions, but aren't always, it's a gray area. That's why I use moral realism, and I use the fact of the conscience and purpose and moral agency as something that we have. And Tavo, have you seen the debate between William Lane Craig and Sam Harris on the moral landscape?
I think so, a long time ago. Yeah.
Oh, I watched that one. That was brilliant. That one.
Yeah. So one of the things that William Lane Craig brings out is the shark forcibly copulates, but he does not grape the other shark. The lion, or I think the stronger argument would be the hamster kills her offspring, but does not, does not murder them. Sorry, Tareyak, but that's precise terminology, and therefore, there is it's categorically impossible for animals to sin because their instinct would otherwise violate what are otherwise objective moral laws for us, even though it's the exact same action. We're not subject to a habitat, and we're not subject to some kind of like instinctual base beastly program. We have metacognition, and that part of that metacognition is our conscience and our purpose and our moral agency. And I don't think that science is going to touch that because it's an immaterial reality as opposed to a testable, repeatable thing like making fire. Because all it takes is like one account of an orangutan in a zoo, like learning how to make fire from a Boy Scout and then repeatedly doing it and then passing it along to their offspring or something.
Yeah,
Tareyak will tell you how to make a fire. He's Irish.
I probably got to go, but it's been really nice to be here. Tareyak, that's your name, particularly pronounced.
Yep.
Really very lovely to chat with you. I hope you'll feel comfortable. I hope you'll come by my channel anytime. If you want to send me an email, my email address is on my video description. It's just drtavosanabria@gmail. Rex, really always wonderful to see you. I would love to showcase the triage argument when you're ready to share it on my channel during a Talking with Tavo segment. And I have some other ideas of how we can collaborate too, and I'll be in touch about that.
Bricky, yeah, that'd be great. I sent you the updated version, by the way. You are totally up to date now.
I'll definitely look at that before I go to sleep. Bricky, really nice to chat with you. Lovely to meet you. I apologize if you were put off by anything. Oh, thanks, Tareyak. Thank you very much. Bricky, I apologize if my laughter was insensitive or
you've made us alarmed, harassed, and distressed, right? Okay, and there's nothing you can do or say now to take away the feelings that you've created within inside of me, right? So I hope you're happy with yourself when you disappear now, right? Okay, knowing that there's lonely British Brit.
I've never once been happy with myself, but I hope we chat again.
I mean, bless you, my friend. You've been an absolute fucking legend. It's been great speaking with you, bud.
Okay, likewise. All right, see y'all later. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, Tavo. Appreciate you joining. And chat, make sure you give him a like and a sub.
And I had a dip too. It's past my bedtime, but Tareyak, I have like so much purpose has been fulfilled tonight in terms of sharing the gospel, talking about the Lord Jesus Christ, talking about purpose, talking about how truth is a person. His name is the Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, Son of Man, the Holy One. And so we owe our lives to him, and we ought to be grateful for him, for everything he's given to us, because we don't deserve any of it. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. Is there anything you'd like to say to me before I head out?
Just again, I appreciate you stopping by and willing to talk about this as well, because it is something, like I said, where like I have kind of like questions to it, and like even just the kind of stuff like pointing out like this whole thing of like where you're kind of like shown one thing and say like that's all Protestants and all this kind of stuff, and just like I said, like being able to answer the different questions and just kind of like share the different things, saying listen, like this like voodoo shit, that ain't Protestant, you know what I mean, and all this kind of stuff as well, because it's like the more and more I kind of like engage just with Christians in general, like the more and more it's just kind of like it's kind of unlocking different things, like even like what you were talking about there about like it has to be a person, you know what I mean, because if it's just a thing, then it doesn't really make sense, you know what I mean. So appreciate you stopping by and appreciate you sharing the message, sharing the good news, so to speak, evangelizing.
Mm-hmm. And Bricky, all the best to you.
You're a fucking wanker, right? And I love you to bits, right? But what Tareyak said there, it's nice to have my eyes opened up, because I'm struggling to deal with the information I've got as well. I mean, I'm a little bit older than Tareyak, but I think we're all on a path to somewhere, and we've been put on this path by someone. It's just connecting the dots and figuring it out. For some people, we're not there yet. So the exam, help me along this line, brilliant. But you're still a fucking wanker, right?
Well, then regard me as such, if you will, and ask God for help. Forget about me. Let God be true and every man a liar.